Hello, everybody. Hello. Hello. Welcome to the stream. Hello. It's been a while. It's been so long. It's been so long. But I'm back. And I wanted to do something a little different today. And we'll kind of get into it because we're already pretty late. I might starting soon on for a while because I need to have a heart to fart with my cat here, who is intent on being like, Dad is home. Dad still got stuff to do. I'm gonna jump on every corner of your desk. I'm going to use every key on your keyboard at once. So to try to calm her down. And if she calms down when there's like nobody around to really pay attention to her at that point. She's like zoomy, 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 zoomy. And if no one's interacting with her, she's like, just like, oh, well, okay. She'll just calm down. Oh boy. But hello, hi. I had been gone for about a week. Well, not a week. I had been gone for 3 days, but wouldn't you know it, that was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That was every day I stream. I was gone, I was visiting family. It was a good visit. It was a much needed visit, truth be told. But while I was there, while I was out and about, in between watching the FanFest live stream and wishing upon wishing and making plans for next year or next FanFest to get a ticket as soon as they're available, because I wasn't there, but I can watch the streams. I found this tabletop RPG called Fabula Ultima, which is what we are looking at today. I don't know why. Let's try doing this here. Hold on. No, I didn't want. No. Oh my god, what in the world? Oh boy. That's what I want. Yeah. There we go. Maybe, oh boy, that has to be. Booping about. There we go, we can do that. Okay. There we go. Now you can all see what song we're listening to on Spotify. And I don't know, but I actually found out Fabula Ultima has a soundtrack, and it's available to listen to on Spotify and Bandcamp and things like that. It has a soundtrack for like tense negotiation, or main menu music, or exploration, or overworld travel and things. It's pretty damn good. It's nice and relaxing. But I found this game called Fabula Ultima, which self-describes itself, like you can see at the bottom, as a TTJRPG. This is a tabletop role-playing game that bills itself as a JRPG emulator. I've read a little bit about how the rules work. I haven't gone into too big a deep dive on like character classes or making monsters or items or things like that. I just kind of wanted to get a sense of like how this is played. So that I generally know what that is, and we can kind of shimmy through that section. But it's really good. As far as I can tell, it's really good and seems really fleshed out. And so I thought we would give this a read, partially because there's so little content out there about Fabula Ultima. Predominantly because of one of the big issues I have with this thing, which we'll probably talk about at the end. But without further ado, let me give you my credentials first, because that may or may not be important, just depending upon who you ask. Generally speaking, well, let me move my chat over there. Let's move our chat over there. There we go. Let me give you my credentials, because they are as as follows. I've probably been playing tabletop RPGs for maybe about the past 9 or maybe 10 years or so. Just off and on, whenever people are like, hey, you want to do a thing? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, let's play. I've been running games myself for maybe the past 5, off and on. It was only just recently, maybe in the past like 2 years or maybe like a year before COVID hit, that I realized I could do it professionally, so I started to do so. Running games for like local game shops and privately. But really I've run like Fantasy Age, D&D, now I'm doing Pathfinder, and I started collecting a lot of source books as well. If it was interesting, sounded interesting, I thought, let me get it, buy it, and read it, because it looks really, really cool. So I like taking apart like books and seeing like what's under the hood, how does this work, how does this function. I'm fascinated by game design, but I am not a game designer myself. I'm just fascinated by how it works and seeing the ideas that people put out and going like, but does this work, does this not work? So I guess those are my credentials for criticism, but also that way you know how to take any thought processes I have about any of this kind of stuff. This is your world, this is your story. Make a choice and fight for what you believe in. Okay, here we go. Nice, simple, easy. Oh, is this on the back? Creature I'm setting together, simple intuitive rule set, bestiary, 15 classes to mix and match, everything the game master needs, including the villains. Free PDF version included. Oh, neat. That's cool. Because I don't have the physical copy yet, so I've got me an extra PDF. That's nice. That's like the beautiful lady, or one of my buddies. This was made by the game design, writing, and development is by Emanuele Galletto, who is an Italian designer. This was designed in Italy, designed to be emulator for like old school classic JRPGs and that kind of classic design. It was published in 2022. And let's read this, because this is always really nice. I always like whenever there's like a foreword or so, because it gives you a bit into the mindset of the game developer. When I started working on this game back in 2017, one thing was already clear. In a time when tabletop role-playing games seemed dominated by dark fantasy titles and gruesome, gritty tales of opportunistic characters steeped in nihilism, I felt the need for a refreshing alternative. Fair and true. Nothing wrong with any of that, but yeah, an alternative's pretty good. I wanted a game of magical worlds and optimistic stories steeped in the wondrous aesthetics of the Japanese console RPGs that left me speechless as a kid. There was an element of nostalgia, sure, but it was accompanied by a conscious need to write a game based on cooperation, hope, and mutual trust, both in the stories it was meant to tell and in its very rule set. For its working title, I went with Fabula Ultima, a Latin phrase that could be translated as last fable or ultimate story. Needless to say, this was a tongue-in-cheek homage to what's probably the most notorious JRPG saga in existence, and also my first encounter with the genre, Final Fantasy X, back in 2001. Mine was 7. During the spring of 2018, my health condition unfortunately plummeted, and the name Fabula Ultima took on a bit of an ominous ring. Luckily enough, this ended up being nothing too serious, but that title has accompanied me during those harsh months, so I decided to keep it for the final release. After all, the whole point of the game was to tell tales of heroes who achieve their goals by overcoming suffering and defeats in the hope for a better future. I've got thoughts about this title, but we'll save that to the end. Working on Fabula Ultima was neither easy nor quick, but dozens of people have given me the strength I needed over the years. Some by supporting me via Patreon, that's good. Others simply sharing the game and playing it with me, testing and experimenting again and again in a process of constant rebuild and transformation that ultimately resulted in the book you are reading today. Speaking of which, my collaboration with Need Games was crucial. While the release was announced during 2020, our conversations about the game date back to 2018. Nicola has followed the project since its beginning, and sometimes I really think he's enamored with it more than I am. Anyway, I've definitely written too much already. Now it's time for the game to speak on its own. All I ask is for you to let yourselves be swept into a heroic adventure rife with hope, adversaries, rebellion, and emotions, and to do so by trusting those who play with you and being passionate about their ideas. To fight for what you believe in because this is your story. Emanuele Galletto. Very nice. Very, very cool. Origin and inspirations. This is worthwhile to look at. It's partially based on tabletop role-playing game Ultima. I definitely get the feeling of that. as I like read like how do you play, how do you do stuff, but I think we'll be on the lookout for like more of that. Written by Atsuhiro Okada and published in English. This game was written and produced under advisement of, with permission of, and with the complete final approval of both Kotodama Heavy Industries and Atsuhiro Okada. Wow, okay. Okay. I wonder if this, let me see here. Really looking for like licenses, but it doesn't have any of that. Okay. Okay. Very cool. Neat. Among the countless sources of inspiration for this game, I want to mention Jonathan Tweet and Rob Hensu's 13th Age, Alberto Tronchi's Aegis, Christian Giffin's Anima Prime. Oh, I remember Anima Prime. Oh my gosh. What kind? I remember hearing about Anima Prime more than anything. D. Vincent Baker's Apocalypse World. Nice. Takeshi Kikuchi and Studio Fear's Arianaud. John Harper's Blades in the Dark, from which the clock mechanic was directly derived. Luke Crane's Burning Wheel. Rob Heinsu, Andy Collins, and James Wyatt's Dungeons & Dragons 4th Edition. Okay. Neat. Interesting choice. Okay. Fred Hicks and Rob Donahue's Fate. Yeah, that makes sense from one of the mechanics that I've seen in here. Rikuzo's Kamigakari. Junichi's Inue's Tenra Bancho Zero, and Ron Edwards' Sword, Soul, and Sex collections of supplements for Sorcerer. Of all of these, I've played D&D. I have Blades in the Dark. I read about the clock mechanic, and I didn't understand it when it was introduced in Blades in the Dark. I'm familiar with Burning Wheel due to Mouse Guard. I have Fate, and have read through Fate, and have seen people play Fate. I haven't run a game of it myself, but I know how it's run. And I've heard about Anima Prime, which is what initially gave me pause for this entire game. Because Anima Prime, I believe, or Anima, was a tabletop RPG, and then later they made like a card game out of it. They tried to do stuff with it, but effectively, they wanted to make the big, huge, massive, Final Fantasy-esque tabletop RPG. Big epic fantasy, your characters are anime as hell. If they leap in the, if they play jump rope, they leap into the air and bounce off the moon kind of stuff. And I think that was the tabletop RPG where like the character sheet was 20 pages long. Crazy stuff. Crazy place. So that was just harder than it needed to be. And I think from what I've seen of this so far, it really, really simplifies it down. So that's good to know. Publishers forward. Okay, neat. Okay, I mean, the publisher was like, yeah, this is why they took it. When I finished the JRPG, I found emptiness inside. Yeah, this is just, I loved JRPGs. My whole generation fell in love with Tifa. Yeah, that is exactly why this person picked it up. Because someone came to them and said, hey, I want to make a JRPG tabletop game, and they went, absolutely, 100%, hit me. Amazing artwork. Amazing artwork. So good. Okay. I think a lot of this, and we're not going to go necessarily page by page. I think a lot of this beginning stuff is like filler. It's usually like, what's an RPG? What's a game master? Here is, basic gameplay of what this looks like, which is just dialogue of people using their imagination. What does this kind of stuff look like? We'll skip all that kind of stuff because we generally know. But if anybody in chat has any questions about what an RPG is, or what I think about one area or another that I may or may not have touched on, or how would this work, or how to do things, feel free to ask. Feel free to just pipe up in chat, because I definitely know enough about being a game master that I can answer those. This is the core rulebook for tabletop RPG inspired by JRPGs such as Bravely Default, Bravely Second, Grand Blue Fantasy, Ni no Kuni, Octopath Traveler, and the legendary Final Fantasy series. Japanese or Japanese style role-playing game. Video game genre that saw its origin in Japan but is currently spread all over the world, counting hundreds of titles. They share some major elements, fantastic stories in which extraordinary individuals confront the darkness that threatens their world, growing and learning to trust each other. Only by struggling together and casting aside their suspicions and differences will they save what they hold dear. And of course, villains that turn into gods that you eventually have to fight. Yeah, growing heroes and powerful villains. Unlike a video game, there's no pre-written plot. Yeah, a role-playing game, roles in the game, all this stuff. We can get rid of that, all that. Basics of play. Yeah, there's no win condition. As long as you create a memorable story and enjoy each other's company, you're all winning.
We're all winning. We're all winners.
Basics of play. Yeah, elevators raise their shield and guards are back. Step forward and speak to the queen. All that. Rules, but what is the game about? This is new. Fabula Ultima was designed to be a TTJRPG, a table talk JRPG. Okay. I've always heard of it as tabletop. But, I guess not. Okay. Heroic and fantastic action. A game of heroes and villains. Heroic destiny. Yeah, like kind of big. Go big or go home. Challenging bosses. Or challenging battles with bosses. And your world. There's no default or canonical world, and that's on purpose. Your group will collaboratively create a custom world in which your tales will take place. That said, the world and characters you create must adhere to 8 core principles known as the 8 pillars, which you can find on the next page. On the other hand, if you're not familiar with the classical tropes of Japanese console role-playing games, you can find a useful collection of inspirational worlds starting on page 16. This artwork's so cute. I love the chibi style stuff. I love the full page like spread. That stuff is beautiful. Chef's kiss. And here we go. This immediately I find very interesting and fascinating. And I'll say why when we're done reading through kind of the basics of it. The 8 pillars. The world in which your adventures will take place is not predetermined. Its cities, kingdoms, deities, and cultures are something your group will create. This, on page 148. That's probably going to be... Oops, not that. Oh, there we go. Perfect. There we are. More screen space. Page 148. Let's see what that's like. Oh, literally, there we go. World creation. Oh, there's a bunch of stuff here. World creation tables and all that stuff. Okay, okay. Let's go back to where we were. Fantastic land will grow organically as you explore and travel across it, adding new details and unraveling ancient mysteries. What ties all Fabula Ultima worlds together are the 8 pillars, and again, we must adhere to these when we're making them. Ancient ruins and harsh lands. The world is an ancient and dangerous place. That's pretty common. This is probably the most common way a game designer is going to introduce battles as a form of conflict. You're going to get in fights, you're going to have to defend yourself because the place is dangerous. Go outside of town, go anywhere where there's not, like, a communal sense of law and order, and you're fending for yourself. A world in peril. This is usually a little different. Villages, castles, and city-states are among the few areas that aren't literally crawling with monsters, brigands, and hostile creatures. Far more dangerous still are villains, powerful antagonists casting their shadow over the entire land. There's a single unspeakable terror behind the dangers of the world, and our heroes are bound to cross its path sooner or later. The idea that there's a single one is kind of neat and interesting. I don't know if that part is a pillar that we must adhere to, or if there's just, you know, the potential to be a very powerful villain at some point in time. Clashing communities. The world may be in danger, but its inhabitants are still divided by ancient grudges. Religious schisms, memories of war crimes, and the conflict between magic and science are among the most common causes of enmity. Reuniting these communities will be key to defeating the great evils of the world. The protagonist should help them overcome their hostilities and see their differences as blessings instead of obstacles. That's kind of neat. Things like D&D's Faerun has like the Lord's Alliance, which is like all the big major cities players are want to go to. They all get along, so it's kind of neat to have to create a world that's like, yeah, there's a bunch of different cities, and they might be peaceful, but they may not necessarily like one another, or they might even just be apathetic to one another, and be like, yeah, we're not going to start a war with you, but we aren't allies. That's kind of a neat touch. And here we get to some nitty-gritty stuff that's kind of original. Everything has a soul. All matter that forms the world, including its creatures, the earth, sky, sun, and stars, are part of a vast flow of spiritual energy. The origin, nature, and function of this energy may vary depending upon the world you create, but its presence is undeniable, and anyone possessing the ability to manipulate it is a force to be reckoned with. Okay. Magic and technology. And this I kind of like. I really like the intermingle of this is a pillar, something you have to adhere to. Not full fantasy, not necessarily full tech. But at the same time, even if you go full fantasy, technology can still be kind of simplistic, but just very magical in nature, like airships kind of thing. That's still technology, but it's a little steampunky. In every Fabula Ultima world, science and magic represent two different ways of studying and manipulating reality. One concerns itself with the tangible nature of matter, the other with the souls that dwell within it, two sides of the same coin. Miraculous machinery might be hidden beneath the ruins of an ancient civilization, and even the most powerful wizards will often make use of vehicles and airships. There you go, airships. Many of these worlds also feature an unusual discipline that combines magic and technology into magic tech. Metal soldiers animated by the souls of the fallen, bombs that can unleash elemental mayhem, and flying machines fueled by wind spirits are only a few examples. Okay. Heroes of many sizes and shapes. Fabula Ultima's protagonists are full-fledged heroes, extraordinary individuals that possess unique abilities and whose actions will shape the fate of the world. While some may not be noble paladins or virtuous paragons of justice, even the thieves and dark knights among them have a fundamentally good nature and can be trusted to do the right thing when the situation gets desperate. In line with, and that's PCs, that's player characters, which is kind of neat. There's not necessarily, I mean, because we have to adhere to this, the idea is there's no evil campaign in, effectively, FU. It's Fabula Ultima's acronym is absolutely FU. In line with the video game genre FU draws inspiration from, our heroes do not follow any rule of realism, be they children with incredible magic powers or elderly warriors able to single-handedly challenge an entire army. All that matters is their strength of spirit. It's all about the heroes. Any relevant event in the game of Fabula Ultima or FU is tied to the heroes, either directly or indirectly. Dramatic plot twists shall happen when the protagonists are present on the scene, and the great powers and evils of the world shall pay them special attention. Following the same logic, the hero's determination will allow them to achieve the impossible, such as defeating an empire sealing away a powerful deity. And then mystery, discovery, and growth. This game is built upon discovery of ancient mysteries and forgotten powers. Yes, but most of all of the heroes themselves, of their feelings and of what they are willing to do in order to fight against the darkness. FU's protagonists are complex and sometimes tragic figures, and their journey will change them forever. So that's kind of neat. So whatever world you build apparently must adhere to these 8 pillars. Ancient ruins, world in peril, everything has a soul. This is kind of neat. And this immediately kind of fleshes out. I like this because when it comes to writing prompts, at the very least, as a writer, whenever somebody says like, oh, just write anything, that's not too terribly helpful. Limitations are a good thing. And so providing a kind of writing prompt for like, you're going to create a whole world, that is daunting. But saying you're going to create a whole world, here are the pillars that it's built upon, makes coming up with ideas and figuring out if ideas you have are good or will work, that makes that a hell of a lot easier. So I really like that. I really like this stuff. Your world could be high fantasy. And again, love this artwork across these 2 pages. I wonder if it'd be better. Can we do a b? No. Can we do a b? Here we go. Hell yeah. Oh, I like it. Now we can see the spreads. Let's see here. So your world can be high fantasy. Great castles whose crystal spires reach the sky. Fleets of ornate airships emerging from the clouds. A high fantasy world is an ageless classic and a perfect fit. Yeah, this is like Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy 14, Final Fantasy 1 for sure. High fantasy themes and even protagonists. Princess who lost her kingdom, the young inexperienced hero from a remote village, the dashing sky pirate with a heart of gold. Yeah, absolutely. High fantasy locations have some magical element to it. Magic's abundant and omnipresent and employed in a variety of ways. Yeah, absolutely. Your world could be natural fantasy. This is kind of neat. This reminds me more of like a Hayao Miyazaki or something along the lines of like nature's overpowering. In a way that most people don't think about. Floating amidst the lush expanse of verdant forests, snow-capped mountains, and crystal-clear lakes, small villages slumber peacefully, coexisting with the beasts and elemental forces of the wilderness. Underneath it all lies the ruins of many past civilizations that once ruled this world of natural fantasy. Yeah. Like protagonist, daughter of the village chief, seeking to prove her worth. The young hermit who stumbled upon the entrance to a magical ruin. The wandering warrior who mistakenly angered a local spirit. Yeah. Locations. Each location in Vista is deeply immersed in vibrant colors and populated by great beasts and monsters. There's no cities and roads, only small villages and narrow paths. I like that. For magic, it's strongly tied to nature, life, and the elements. And antagonists tend to bring disastrous calamities or ancient powerful monsters. When the antagonist is a person, they're often misguided or acting for what they believe to be good for their community. Most of the time, they will see reason after the heroes thwart their plans. The true enemy, however, is generally something that cannot be reasoned with, such as the immortal embodiment of a natural disaster that will require great sacrifices to placate. That's a neat idea. And I like that they're, again, giving you suggestions. These are things to riff off of. This is good, this is good. Ah, this artwork. Techno fantasy. Heavy rains fall from polluted clouds, clanking sounds over the brass and steel pipework, spreading from one building to another. Casting its shadows over the rundown districts is the massive shape of an industrial chimney, the factory below draining energy and power from the depths of this techno-fantasy world. Yeah, they're darker, more serious in tone. They revolve around the exploitation of natural resources, unchecked and ruthless scientific experimentation. There's Cloud Strife, former mercenary disgusted by his past actions. The failed experiment who was abandoned by their cold-hearted creator. The scarred hero who had everything taken from her by the elite. Yeah. Techno-fantasy locations, I mean, again, this is Midgar, often take the form of a literal above and below, where the shining palaces of the wealthy steal the very sun from the vast majority of the people who struggle daily in the slums below. Techno-fantasy world magic has largely been claimed by technology and turned into yet another source of power. The stream of souls has been gravely wounded and corrupted, and the original ways of magic were forgotten or more likely suppressed. Yeah, the antagonist of a techno-fantasy world should represent the darkness of modern society and the ruthlessness of industry and exploitation. Yep. Wealthy, influential, self-made saviors, so to speak, willing to be... left unchecked, their egotistical ambitions will lead to magical cataclysms or full-scale war. Yeah, I like that. I like that stuff a lot. And those are just like 3 possible examples, but these are the ones that fit this kind of game and these 8 pillars the best. Game materials, we all know this. Although, it's only going to use a D6 to a D20. And even then, I don't know where the D20 comes in. Because all the stats and stuff are all just like D12s at most. Wow. Also known as D10s, the zero face should be read as 10. Okay. 12-sided die and all that. Yeah, but no D4s. Not a single D4. And then all these sheets. There's a character sheet, group sheet, world sheet, and map sheet. And you can get these all on their website. Which group sheet is nice. I like that idea. Players, read this book. Oh, this is kind of neat. This I like. I wish there was more dedicated to this section right here. Make sure to read the introduction. Hey, you're already doing that. Learn the game rules, familiarize yourself with world creation, group creation, and character creation. You might want to steer clear of the bestiary, because that's all spoilers and stuff like that. So I like that. Like, just those 3 sections and the game rules, and you're good. And that's all you need. Create the game world. Together, you'll do all that. While doing so, you must adhere to the 8 pillars discussed. But aside from that, you're free to come up with whatever regions, characters, and legends you want. Create an archetype for your group. You must choose the kind of group your characters will form. Will you be guardians of a miraculous artifact, revolutionaries? Let me turn this music down a touch. Is it nice? But I don't want to I don't want to necessarily compete over it, so hopefully that's a little easier to hear. If the music's too loud, please let me know. Create your heroic character. Cooperate with everybody else. Contribute to the ongoing story. So this... well, it doesn't even say. Keeping the unique characteristics of your group and world in mind, create the player character PC. This doesn't sound necessarily like... by all accounts, I think you want to make a character and make a group and make a world and do all that. That's your session 0. You set the stakes, you set everything, you make a character, and you do all that together. I would have thought somewhere, maybe we're skimming through it, but I would have thought somewhere it would have said, like, do this at the table with everybody. But play as a hero. The protagonists of Fabula Ultima are heroes and adventurers, larger-than-life characters with unique abilities and an epic, sometimes tragic, destiny. When you play the game, keep this premise in mind. Act heroically. Don't back down from challenges and try to make the world a better place. Which is, again, that's neat. That's the idea of there's no evil character campaign. The campaign is good guys. You're the good guys. Your character should be far from an immutable entity. While their past may be complex and tragic, change it, embrace it. Which is good. Yeah, Game Master, read this book. You should also pay special attention to the Game Master chapter and learn how to consult the bestiary. Yep, same thing. Gather proper tools, all that stuff. Follow the rules. Learn the rules of the game and apply them as they are written. If you think one or more elements should be altered, discuss the matter with everyone else. Only change those elements if the entire group has agreed to do so. If I could highlight this permanently, I would. That is so important. So important. Which is also kind of neat because this is a rule book that is saying these rules work. Don't change them necessarily, but if you think something needs to be altered, not removed, not ignored, just altered, discuss it with everyone else. Which is generally how homebrew should work. If you're playing, in my humble opinion, if you're playing any RPG and you decide to implement some homebrew, it should be an enthusiastic yes from everyone involved, Game Master included. And if it's not that enthusiastic, like, oh yeah, that'll make our game better, don't do it. Because then otherwise you have people butting heads, and as far as I can tell right now, you have people leaving because there's not going to be that shared buy-in. There is a lot of shared buy-in already. There is a lot of, we're going to make this together, we're going to do these things together, we're going to do all these functions together, because we're all trying to buy in together. And again, as you're making the world yourself, you're creating that buy-in. You want a high natural fantasy world to play in. Everybody does. So yeah, that's automatic buy-in for everybody. Breathe life into the game world, breathe life into your villains. That's kind of important too. Cooperate with everyone else. When playing the game, pay attention to what everybody else is saying and encourage everyone to play an active role. Each participant should get their time in the spotlight. Do your best to cooperate with everyone else and make sure the play environment is enjoyable and welcoming. Which is really important because sometimes the idea of cooperating with everybody else as a game master might sound counterintuitive, but you absolutely want to be a cooperative game master. Play to find out what happens. Never force the player's hand and make sure not to push them towards a specific event. Let their actions and objectives guide you instead. Resist the temptation to create a predetermined plot. Let the hero's choices and actions tell you what aspects of the stories the players really care about. Very important. Although I'm very curious because I think they have a small starting adventure that teaches you all the different areas of play. So I'm curious how that works out, or if they try to write it in a different way or a different style apart from other one-shots where they're just kind of like, things happen, or like have one of these series of events depending upon what players do. Like, it's kind of interesting. I'm up a doctor. I was like, why didn't I get enough notifications? Because I hadn't opened the Twitch app on this device yet. New phone. Who Newfable? Who is Newfable? Well, hello. If you're used to other RPGs in which the Game Master controls the evolution of the story and prepares scenes ahead of time, let go of that when playing this game. Here you must only weave situations around what the players decide to do and add details to the world as required by the circumstances. Yes. The game gives them plenty of tools to influence and shape the story, up to and including the ability to alter plot elements you have previously introduced. Embrace this creative flow. I wholeheartedly agree. 2 reasons why. First of which, easier to prep. When your players are sitting there telling you what they want, and they are telling you this is what we're going to say yes to, and this is the stuff we like, and this is what we enjoy, that makes prep 10 times easier. Because you go, all right, cool, you want, you know, like a grand adventure in a mega city? All right, we'll do that. Right? Like, oh, you want to have a shopping, or you want to have a beach episode, or a shopping episode? We'll do that, right? We'll just let things happen, because that is what the players are getting excited about, and that's what they want. But second, at that point, you're really just preparing, you know, scenes, shots, encounters, whatever the game calls them. You're just planning encounters just to have in your back pocket. And they're agnostic of setting, they're agnostic of choice. They're just like, here's a thing for you to do. And you can change that based on what the players are feeling like and what they're doing. It can just make prep a little easier. It definitely makes running a game or being a game master more intimidating. As you look at that and go, but I gotta prep stuff. You just kind of prep, like, generally, you just kind of want to have like a bag of goodies. That doesn't mean you never prep or don't do anything like that, but having a bag of goodies is a really good thing. Ask questions, build on the answers. Yeah, move the action forward by asking questions to everybody else. What will you do now? Where can you find this information? How do you feel about what happened? Are you willing to risk your life for this? What will you tell your mother? Ask plenty of questions, then build on the player's answers. That's cool. I like that. This artwork is great. Look at that full page. Ah, oh, so good. Okay, game rules, which is good. Now we're actually getting into the nitty-gritty of it. And this, I think I know more of, because I kind of flipped to this section. I think when I first got this PDF, I was just kind of like, yeah, build worlds, do all that stuff. Yeah, like I had dice. Yes, thank you. But this is what I read first, just to kind of get a general gist of what it is. So useful advice in changing the rules. Whenever you want to change something, make sure to discuss it with your game group. To make life easier, the book includes a variety of optional rules that can be used to safely customize your play experience. Safely, again, key word. Like, these variant rules are not going to snap the game like a twig. It's not going to create a vastly different play experience. It's going to just, you can safely do it. You're not going to immediately take a left turn and suddenly grimdark fantasy. It's just going to alter it a little bit for the enjoyment of everybody around the table. I like that. This art is neat. This art is great. I disagree with you there, Muppet Doctor. This art is great. Artwork is so good and evocative. Everything looks so nice. Scenes. Scene is a segment of gameplay with a beginning and an end. Okay, these are encounters. Game scenes flow like this. Yep, introduce the scene, characters are present. Neat and great, do not disagree, yeah. So you frame the scene. Step 2, player characters interact with what is present in the scene. Their actions and decisions push the story forward. Additionally, there will be times when the outcome of characters' actions needs to be determined by rolling dice. Checks. Got that. The game master can end the scene at any point, wrapping things up. The situation's been resolved, or gameplay's move on to a different location. Once the scene is ended, another one will begin. Yeah, encounters, scenes. They use scenes here. I'm really like going from like bold word to bold word, reading the paragraph. Some rules and effects rely heavily on the scene structure. Many spells, for instance, last until the end of a scene. Pay attention to these. That's pretty cool. Okay. So spells can last for a length of time. Until the end of the scene. I wonder if those are like really powerful ones. Or ones where like in D&D it says like, oh, this spell lasts for an hour or 2 hours or half a day. That kind of thing. Conflict scenes. When the hero's goals clash with those of another faction, the game master may declare the beginning of a conflict scene, be it a battle, a breakneck chase, or a tense audience with a king. That is good. There's a lot of times where games like this, or like there's battles or there's fights and you roll for initiative and that's kind of it. And then they kind of mention like, that might be, you might do that for other stuff. This flat out states, If things get heated, it begins a conflict scene. The camera zooms in and the character's actions are tracked in greater detail. Yeah, that's probably initiative checks, I think, this game uses for that kind of stuff. But that's everything. Like, I know D&D 5e says you can use initiative for chase scenes and fights, and they work a little differently. Here, kind of the same thing works out. Same with Pathfinder. You can do things a little differently and still roll for initiative. And the sequence of play kind of works the same way, but the end goals are different. How players get to that end goal is different. Same thing here. I just like the way that this is worded. Interlude scenes. There will be moments in the game. Is this downtime? Probably. Let me just keep reading. There's being moments in the game where the story moves at a slower pace. A trek across the plains, the long descent down a cavern, a night of rest in town, or even a month spent waiting for an ally to recover. Instead of a moment-by-moment scene, we can describe these situations as a sequence of short frames that show our heroes as they perform a variety of actions. During an interlude scene or interlude, each player describes the general task their character performs, whether it's searching the village for someone or staying on the lookout for dangers in a dungeon. However, if a player wants to have a detailed interaction with someone or something, you should switch back to a standard scene. Okay, just like, here's things, here's where you are, might be a couple of checks or so. Interlude scenes are especially useful when characters want to pursue long-term objectives such as projects. Ooh. Or to describe journeys. Ooh! Okay. So downtime. But like downtime plus? Figure that out. Game Master scenes. If the Game Master wants, they may play a scene in which no player character is present, and in which the players are simply spectators, separate from their characters. These Game Master scenes can be used to foreshadow an event, introduce a future threat, or show a villain in action. They work just like cutscenes in a video game, or pre-title scenes in many movies and TV show episodes. Game Master scenes are an excellent way to add depth to antagonists and provide a sense of narrative tension. Ooh. I like it. This should also come with a warning about metagaming, which I haven't seen yet. I haven't seen anywhere in these rules so far a warning of like, by the way, your player and your character know different things. Let me see. Maybe they do and I just skipped it. Let's see your Destiny rules. No, yeah, so far no. Nothing about metagaming. It might be later in the book, I'm not entirely sure. Sessions and campaigns. Multiple scenes form a session. A typical session of FU will last approximately 4 hours. The more people in your group, the larger each session tends to be. That makes sense. Campaigns are multiple sessions. There's no set duration for a campaign. Some people play a game for a couple of weeks, others commit to it for years. When you sit down to play FU for the first time, discuss how long you want to play. This will help plan a schedule. That being said, it's designed to shine over the course of approximately 20 to 50 game sessions. Wow. Okay. That's a pretty long and lengthy campaign. If you want to speed this up, there are rules for faster advancement. Ooh, neat. Okay, well, look at that. Because that can also just be a good way to be like, we're not really sure what this game is like. You're trying to make the sell to a lot of people and like, yeah, I really want to play this game. Fast advancement can be a good way to do that. That way players get kind of the whole experience, or as much of an experience as they want, quicker, without having a massive time commitment. Allies. Some effects in the game affect allies. Allies simply anyone, not you. You cannot use this on yourself. Always round down. Okay, we got that. Add, subtract, multiply, divide. If you ever need to perform multiple operations on the same number, you must do so in the following order: addition, subtractions, multiplications, and divisions. It's a little different from normal math, but okay. It's probably to avoid parentheses. Yeah, it's probably to avoid parentheses and notation. And also just to make it easier, like you're gonna just add, subtract, get to a number, then you'll multiply or divide that number in any way, shape, or form. A little different than probably what we're expecting, but yeah, fine. Specific beats general. Yep, we see that all the time in like Magic the Gathering and card games and stuff. Timing issues. If some of the choices or effects are controlled by player characters and others by NPCs, player characters always go first. Neat. That's good. I like that. Anatomy of a character. Again, it's artwork. So good. Ooh, is that the character sheet?
Yeah.
It's tracked on the character sheet. Traits. Each character has a total of 3 different traits: identity, theme, and origin. Identity is a short sentence that sums up your character's general concept, like Sky Pirate or Queenless Knight. Theme is a strong ideal or sentiment that drives your character's actions, such as anger, justice, or ambition. And origin is where you come from. While playing, you'll be able to invoke your character's traits to improve your odds when rolling dice. That's Fate. That's the Fate system. That's Fate. That's also a little bit of the Cipher system as well, where your character is an adjective noun that verbs, and your powers are derived a lot from that. But you can also say, hey, I act this way, or I have this personality. Can I get a plus or minus to the roll? Fate works that way in great detail. You have like short narrative blurbs about your characters, and then skills, and that's where you roll fudge dice. They're literally dice with empty faces, plus faces, and minus faces, and that's it. So you like start with numbers, and then you fudge the result, which is why they're called fudge dice. But same thing there, like you ask your game master, hey, I've got this skill, I've got this ability, can I use that on this check? And they go, yeah, that's relevant, or that's a bit of a stretch, no. Bonds. Heroes need connections to grow stronger, and bonds represent exactly that. A bond can be tied to one of 3 emotions, each belonging to one of 3 different pairings, as shown on the character sheet. Admiration or inferiority, loyalty or mistrust, affection or hatred. Okay. For each emotion in a bond, the strength of that bond is increased by 1, up to a strength of 3, if you have an emotion in each pairing. Ooh, okay. So you can have... Okay, so like if you're a knight to a queen, then you could have your bond to the queen be admiration, loyalty, and affection, and your bond with that person is strength of 3. Okay. Hi, Sir Bahamut, hello. Hello, hello. Okay. And again, as I said before, as I'm reading through this, if anybody has any questions or wants further clarification as we read through this, even if you, because some folks might just be listening to this. Character sheet English. I think that was a link. I'm sorry, Sir Bahamut. Yeah, I've disabled links for Twitch. But yes, you can find character sheets on Fabula, Ultima, or I think Need Games. I think is the people that publish this. Let me see here real quick. Let me get their website. Yeah, Need Games. Or FabulaUltima.com. Yes, you can get character sheets. And all those are free. The character sheets are free to download. In fact, I think you can get the character sheets, the world sheets, the group sheets. You can get all that stuff for free online at their website. And I think I've even heard whispers of like online character builders and monster builders and things like that to help out. Because as much as this game does not get talked about, where it does get talked about, it's really passionate. So I think a couple of people have like popped off being like, I've made an online tool, here it is. I haven't looked too much into it yet, but I think they're there. Oh yeah, the example. If you have a bond of inferiority and loyalty towards the Sapphire Princess, the strength of it is 2. If you later begin to feel affection towards her, its strength becomes 3. Just like traits, bonds can be invoked to improve your die rolls, and they can also boost your ability to help your companions. Yep, same thing, just like Fate. Well, maybe not just like Fate, in terms of like aiding or helping, but same thing. You can invoke them, you can say I want to use them, and it provides a mechanical benefit. And that's half of why I like systems like this, games that are narrative with character creation, but you use that narrative element of your character to provide a mechanical actual benefit. I like that because it's all the incentive players need to make sure that their character is thematic and to play to their character, because they're going to immediately get those benefits. These aren't like treats from the DM or the game master. These are literal mechanics. When they do these things, it has an effect. Sorry, I keep going off on thoughts here because generally I have thoughts. Fabula points. A powerful currency in this game will come and go is Fabula points. Sound like tokens. They can be earned by facing adversaries and spent, to invoke traits and bonds, as well as fuel a variety of special effects. Players can also spend Fabula points to introduce new elements in the story and shape the world around their characters. Nice. Your character's level is an abstract indication of their power. Characters generally begin their adventures at level 5 and can climb up to level 50. Nice. Okay. And there's a reason for that. I know the reason. It's the skill system in building a character. We'll look into that. But there's a reason for that. On average, you should gain experience points to reach a new level at the end of every other session. So that is really quick. You're going to gain a level every other session. This reminds me a lot of Quest, which is another RPG system I've read that is like a very short book. I think it's like 100 pages. And the rules there are like, there's no experience. At the end of every session, your character levels up and you get a new thing. And if you want to space it out, you certainly can, but it's just there to be like, whenever you play, you walk away with something. Same thing here. You're going to walk away with something, but that level up is probably every 2 sessions. Still really quick. Classes and skills. Whenever your character gains a level, that level will be put into one of the 15 classes available in this book, either to develop an already obtained class or start a new one. Each class grants a variety of skills and abilities, and you choose which ones you want to invest in. Even if you and another hero share some class choices, your characters will end up being very different in how they are built and played. Some class skills can be taken multiple times. When the same skill is taken multiple times, its skill level, abbreviated as SL, will also increase. If you take Guardian's Fortress skill twice, its SL will be equal to 2. And we will definitely take a look at like the classes and what those look like, and generally how to like build a character. Attributes. There's 4. Dexterity. We kind of understand, like quickness, sleight of hand, pickpocketing, that kind of thing. Insight. Okay. Understanding and reasoning. That's sort of like wisdom a little bit. Maybe like a little bit of wisdom. Maybe. Oh no, charisma is, they say, is willpower. Might is strength and fortitude. Strength, charisma from D&D. Physical strongness. Oh boy. That nugget.
No, that was me.
Oh, I thought that was the nugget.
It was the over things because of how I've rearranged them.
Ah, gotcha. Gotcha.
But it was me.
Gotcha. And willpower. Determination, charisma, discipline. Okay. So mental and physical fortitude, and then mental and physical aptitude, I think, is probably the best way to describe that. Dexterity and insight is aptitude, might and willpower is fortitude. Just either mentally or physically. Each attribute is represented by a die size, ranging from a 6-sided up to a powerful 12-sided die. Okay. The One Ring uses this. I think this is a mechanic just called step die. That means, you know, like whenever you get a stat increase or whenever you get a buff or something like that, your die increases by a step, which effectively just means the number of sides on it increases to the next available common size, which is usually even, 6, 8, 10, 12. Some effects will temporarily alter your attribute die sizes. This is known as the current attribute die size, while your default size is called the base. Yeah. Hit points, mind points, but it's still MP anyway, so mana, yeah. HP represents a character's ability to withstand pain and fatigue. MP represents a character's focus and concentration. Inventory points, or IP, are an abstract resource that characters can spend to create consumable items on the spot, such as potions and antidotes, which is really cool. I like how that works out. Defense and magic defense. Defense represents a character's ability to avoid being hit. May represent dodging blows for characters with high dexterity, as well as absorbing and deflecting them through a clever use of shield and armor. Magic defense is to resist offensive spells and similar magic attacks. Initiative modifier. This number indicates the character's ability to act quickly in a conflict scene. So it's a modifier, so that's probably added to a result. Equipment and backpack. Variety of items and things like that, equipment and stuff, such as a second suit of anything that can be equipped will be stored in the backpack. Consumables and single-use items such as potions and elixirs, on the other hand, are represented by your inventory points. So again, it's not like, oh, I've got 6 potions of healing. It's you got 6 potions of healing worth of inventory points, I believe. And Zenit. is a common courtesy used in the worlds of Fabula Ultima? I would probably just say it's Gil 9 times out of 10. And this is the interesting part. This I really like. I like dice pool systems. This is a dice pool system. I like dice pool systems because, excuse me, they run on averages. So it's a little easy to tell, like, I'm likely to get this number. I'm likely to get this thing. Like 2d6, it's an average of 7. So anything like Dungeon World does this. So like 6, 7, and 8 are common numbers you're going to roll with 2d6. And so there's rules for like when you roll that number, this happens. Because they're the most common. You roll higher than the most common, it's good. Roll under the most common and it's bad. So this one just says the word check indicates a die roll based on a character's core attributes. Dexterity, insight, might, and willpower. Characters must perform checks when required by the game rules. Striking a target, casting a spell, using a class skill often requires a check. Effects that do not explicitly call for a check always succeed automatically. When asked for by the... And that's nice too. That's just nice to put in there. In case you have a game master that, you know, says, what was that? You just casted a spell and you did a thing? For some reason it doesn't work. Like, no. When they do it, it works all the time. Unless, you know, again, unless like there is actually like a trap or something that happens that like kills magic or so. But I imagine at that point you communicate that to your players so that they don't get frustrated. Or when asked by the game master has the right, my right, to ask characters to perform checks when attempting risky actions, facing opposition, or reacting to danger. For the game to run smoothly, the game master must learn when to ask for a check and when not to do so. Note that only the game masters can ask for a check. Players may never do so. That's interesting. For two reasons. That sentence is interesting for two big reasons. First of which is goodbye insight checks are still there. You literally have an insight attribute. That's what they're there for. But that's the idea. A lot of players will always ask, like, can I make an insight check to do a thing? This simply says if you are a player, you can't ask for it. But it doesn't say you can't ask for I want to do a thing. And that is part of what keeps the kind of metagaming out of it. So instead of asking your game master, like, can I make a check? You instead would probably say, like, I want to, like, can I figure out if this person is lying or telling the truth? Or can I figure out if this person's actually the villain in disguise? Or, you know, can I spot any traps in the room? So it's less of, you know, let me make this check to spot for traps, and is more of just describe what your character's doing. It's the game master's job to determine that's going to be a check and it's going to be this. So saying that players may never do so kind of says like it's a faux pas. Don't do it. Just say what you want to do. It puts more impetus on the game master, sure, but it's not a hard impetus. But the doctor says that's just semantics, as that's obviously what the players mean in context, though. Sure, yes, obviously, but for a lot of you know, push the bridge of my glasses up with my, you know, with my middle and ring finger as it glints in the light as I say, actually, having that kind of stuff in a book is helpful to simply say that's the rules of the game, that's what it's like, but also that's helpful to have in case you've never played a TTRPG before. So you can go like, is that a thing? And people can just be like, no, it's not a thing. Just say what you want your character to do. It's a way to take impetus off of a player, even if it sounds restrictive. Like, if I'm suspicious of someone and I ask for an insight check, I'm saying I don't trust them, can I figure out if they're lying? That's the point, Muppet Doctor. The point is to say, you don't ask for an insight check, you say, hey, my character's really suspicious of them. Do I believe them? And at that point, the GM can say, like, yeah, you believe them because they're telling the truth. You know, and just kind of like break the fourth wall a bit to say, like, check's not needed here, you believe them because they're telling you the truth. Or you can say, I don't know, make me an insight check. And that would be the idea behind that. That's the only reason why that's there. It's not like, you know, this sentence is not a nun slapping the hand with the ruler. It's sitting here just being like, just say what it is that your character's doing. It's the game master's job to ask for the checks required, if it is required. It's not the player's job to figure out, like, oh, but is this a check? Is this not a check? Is this a thing? if they don't need to make a check, they just don't have to. I feel like if I did that, lots of DMs would say, I don't know, do you? That is the mark of, I think, a really sassy game master. I struggle to say a really bad game master, because that might not be true. But that is the mark of a really sassy game master, who's kind of intentionally asking the player, like, do you know the rules? And that, I don't know, no need for that. Like, keep the game moving, I say. But that's my job as a game master, is just to keep the game moving. So me as a game master, I don't want to be like, I don't know, do you know? It's more just like, yeah, you do. Or, no, you might not. Make a check. A check is presented as a formula indicating which dice you have to roll and add up together. Dice pools, yeah. Checks always require you roll exactly 2 dice. That's nice, neat, simple, effective. Example, an insight willpower check performed by a character with d6 insight and d10 willpower will result in that character rolling a d6 and a d10 and adding them together, thus generating a total result between 2 and 16. Although, that produces an average of, what? 9. So, like, if you got a d6 and a d10 and you're asked to do that, then you know you're probably going to roll somewhere between an 8, 9, or 10. Generally, those are the most average. That's the tip of the curve for that probability chance. But yeah, anywhere between 2 and 16. Some checks will also require you to add or subtract. Okay, that's like initiative modifier. That's where that comes in. So a might plus 5 check will roll their might die twice and then add 5 to the result. That's kind of neat. When to perform checks. I like this. I like the artwork of this lady just being like, here's the thing. Don't forget. Knowing when to call for a check and when not to is a skill that develops over time through trial and error. That I like. Very subtly saying, like, you don't have to get it right away. Just learn when you do. Player characters are heroes unless there's a capable opposition or immediate threat. A player character's actions should simply succeed. Finding the tavern requires no roll. Getting there without being noticed by the local bandit gang will take some effort. Context and circumstances. The same action might require a check depending upon when and where it takes place. Swimming in a calm river, no check. While doing the same during a flood is extremely dangerous and would require one. Relevant background. If a character's traits or general background are enough for them to succeed, the game master should simply allow it. That's a little different. Because most games like D&D or Pathfinder pretty much say, like, yes, you are trained in insight. If we can use the example from you again, Muppet Doctor. Yes, you're trained in insight. You should be good at just this, and your background is detective. You know, like, so you should know this, but you're still going to make a check. And most game masters will simply say, like, you just need to make a check. Because there is that, like, possibility for failure. Here it says, like, if your background is literally like a detective, and you're trying to figure out if somebody's lying to you, you succeed. Because you're a hero, and you have that trait, and you're, you know, you have it. Interesting here, though, is that it doesn't say if a character's traits are invoked. So it simply says if you have them, if you have a trait, if you have a background, you know, if you're from a clan of detectives, then yeah, like, no need for an insight check. You just do it. No need to invoke it either. You just get to have it. Impossible actions. Some actions simply cannot succeed, but you have to be open to the player's creativity. Yes. And no, hold on. You can't jump from Earth to the moon, but you can build a magical ship to get there. You just need to remember that nothing comes for free and build interesting situations around the player's ideas. Again, like, you kind of don't want to make a player make a check if you're just checking for a crit or checking for a fumble. Because generally it's like, that's just time kind of wasted. It's either incredibly hard and you say, like, you can't do that. You know, but this is also trying to guide them. Like, yeah, you can't jump from the Earth to the moon. Like your character's asking, is like, but you could build something to do that. Kind of like circumnavigate a check by probably putting in another check somewhere else. Relevant failure. Failing a check means the situation gets worse. If failure has no relevant impact on the situation, the game master should simply describe the outcome of the action and skip the check. Same is true when a character isn't acting under pressure. Their actions may require time, but they will no doubt achieve their goal. So yeah, like picking the lock on a door, they could probably do that. Picking a lock quietly, without notice, that might require a check. and stick to the rules. If the rules ask for a check, or if they don't, there's probably a good reason. Think twice before doing the opposite, and only do so if everyone at the table is okay with it. That makes sense. Check terminology. Okay, yeah, modifier result difficulty level, abbreviated as DL. Okay, instead of DC. Okay. If the result is greater than or equal to this number, so roll at or over. High roll, abbreviated as HER. It indicates the higher the 2 dice rolled in a check and will be used to calculate various effects, typically weapon and spell damage. Classy. That is classy if that is actual. For instance, if you roll a d8 and a d10 for a check and the die show a 6 and a 9, the high roll for the check will be a 9. That's classy because it just speeds things along. Oh my goodness. Critical successes. Here we go. When both die rolled during a check show the same number, and that number is 6 or higher, the result is a crit success. Another way to put that is that you score a critical success on double 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12. If you roll a crit, your check is automatically successful, and you get to apply the effects of an opportunity. And those are all over here. Okay. Fumble is a 1. When both dice show a 1, the result's a fumble, which is the exact opposite. No matter the modifiers, a fumble check is always a failure. Not due to the character's incompetence, but because of some unfortunate twist. That's just a nice way to put it. Like, it's not because, don't describe the character screwing up or doing something silly, unless they're amicable to it, but it's just like something happened. Something happened, and call it fate. When a player rolls a fumble, they immediately earn 1 Fabula point. That's nice. I think that's the same as fate. Like, if you roll under a certain part of a check, you get a token to invoke other stuff. And again, same thing here. If you fail a check, you get a Fabula point you can use to invoke stuff on your character sheet. Opportunities are unexpected twists in the story, sometimes good, sometimes bad. When you spend an opportunity, which you'll get from a crit, you may pick an option from the list below or come up with a different twist that fits the current scene. Game Master has final say on whether an opportunity is appropriate. So an example, Vela the Thief is hopping from roof to roof in an attempt to shake off Count Eligor's mercenaries, and she rolls a crit. The player controlling Vela describes how she loses her pursuers and chooses the favor opportunity. Her daring performance will earn her the sympathy of the villagers who are already fed up with the Count's tyranny. Yeah, I'm a big fan of when players narrate failures. I got a nat 1, I'm way too distracted by my friend. Yeah, I like that too, like, oh, they did something cool. The sun was in my eyes and I forgot my sunglasses. Or like, yeah, I like that too. So opportunities, advantage. Next check gets a +4 bonus. Okay, that's good. Affliction. Character suffers days, shaken, slow, or weak. You create a bond towards someone or something, or add an emotion to one of your existing bonds. That's really cool. Faux pas. Choose a creature present on the scene. They make a compromising statement chosen by the person who controls them. Okay. Huh. That can actually be a really cool thing to enact. Like if the players are fighting a boss monster, and they go like, we don't want the crit or anything like that, or maybe like it's got a bunch of afflictions on it already. Let's go for faux pas. Then, then that villain can be like, turn to his minions and be like, you idiots! Don't cut the chandelier, it's right above me! And like something like that, right? Then the players go like, oh, we can do that. That's actually really cool. That's really neat. Like that is a way and an opportunity for the Game Master to hide stuff in like combats or encounters or scenes that can really let players know like, oh, we can interact with this thing without the Game Master telling them automatically. Favor. Your actions earn you someone's support or admiration. Yeah, like the example above. Information. You spot a useful clue. The Game Master may tell you what it is or ask you to introduce that detail yourself. Okay. Lost item. An item is destroyed, lost, stolen, or left behind. That can actually be kind of cool. You can put like some items on enemies and have them use that opportunity. Like you get that, but when you crit. Progress. You may fill or erase up to 2 sections on a clock. We'll go over that. That's a big one. I learned more about clocks from reading this. Plot twist. Something or someone or something of your choice suddenly appears on the scene. That's nice. Just a way to be like, introduce some drama. Here we go. Scan. You discover one vulnerability or one trait of a creature you can see. That's great. They're just like, get me some information. I want some info on this boss. I want some info on these enemies. Or unmask. You learn the goals and motivations of a creature of your choice. Super cool. I like that. And I like that these all are... This is very much the Fantasy Age. Fantasy Age was one of the first RPG systems I ran as a game master. And there, you roll 3d6. It's a 3d6 system. And one of them is called a stunt die. And if your stunt die and one of your other 2 dice are identical numbers, you get that many stunt points. So if you roll a 3 on your stunt die and at least one other 3 on the other 2 dice you roll alongside it, you get 3 stunt points. And you spend them on a variety of things, whether it's pluses to checks, debuffs, things like that. Kind of like this. But this is just more straightforward. You roll a crit, get an opportunity. No need to be like, oh, I've got this many points, I don't want to waste some, I don't want to, I want to use one that's good. Just like, what do you want? Pick from a menu, what do you want? Or even ask for something and the game master can be like, yeah, it's appropriate, sure. Performing an attribute check. Okay, we just kind of went through this. Their goal, what they want to accomplish. Based on the approach, the game master chooses the attributes. Difficulty level. This is based on the consequences of a failure and what is at stake. Add the modifiers if it's a fumble or critical success. Otherwise, the result is greater than or equal to the difficulty level they succeed. And then things happen. Okay. Difficulty level. DL is a measure of how complex and risky a certain operation can be. It abstracts several elements into a single number. The amount of knowledge that you have to complete it, any helpful or hindering circumstances, the lack or presence of important resources, the kind of impact the action will have on the story, be it now or later. That's an interesting way to set difficulty levels, or DCs. The other 3, these 3, generally make up how most game masters are going to set a difficulty level. This one, the kind of impact it'll have on the story, that's really neat. Because that says, hey, this is a very, very hard DC, or DL. This is a really hard check because it's really important. So that's neat. I really like that. It sets stakes outside of the players needing to make a check. In summary, difficulty is an abstraction of how the current situation is opposing or hindering the character. Okay. And determining the difficulty for a check. DL7 is easy. That's the average of 2d6, which is the lowest die you can have in this game. So yeah, so that's nice. DL7 is literally roll 2d6. Those are the lowest you can have in a stat. There's no d4s in this game. 2d6, average of 7, you're likely to hit this. So you're really just checking if you get an average or higher. DL of 10 is normal, competent person or a very talented one. DL of 13 is very hard. DL of 13 is the average of 2 D12s, which is kind of interesting. Like, it's a hard check unless you're rolling 2 D12s, and even then it can be swingy. D4s are so unsatisfying to roll, in my opinion. I agree. The caltrops can be nice, but yeah, they just kind of thud. I like things to roll around a bit. They're really nice. And then DL16, someone who is among the very best in that field. That you can't really meet with an average. In fact, the highest you could do that is with, like, rolling the biggest numbers on, like, a D10 and a D6. So that, yeah, that can be... Those are good DLs. Just 7, 10, and it just increases by 3. That's kind of just like the level system in the Cypher system. It just increases by 3. So there's no reason to be like, oh, but it's easy but a little normal. Oh, let's go for like an 8 or a 9. Like, no, just make it a 7 or a 10. And everybody's rolling with averages anyway, so just like make a 7, 10, be done with it. Or like 10, 13, you're good. Go with 10. If you're the game master and find yourself stumped when choosing an appropriate difficulty level, use 10. Neither too high nor too low, and it's easy to remember. That's nice. Thank you for the tip. Checks in play. Okay, all that. Success and failure never subvert the outcome. relevant success, no do-overs. Yeah, this is standard practice for game masters. Like, don't try. I guess the outcome of the check must be applied for what it is. No one at the table can turn a failure into a success, and vice versa. Otherwise, why would dice be rolled in the first place? Yeah, absolutely. This is the big question of, should you ever fudge a die result as a game master? Like, right? Like, if you're rolling dice behind a screen to hit somebody, you know, do you fudge the results to not make it a crit? Do you fudge the result to just make it a hit? Do you fudge the result to make it a miss because you don't want to be too cruel? You know, some people will say, yeah, sure, or no, you don't do that. But the big philosophical question in the air is, why would you roll dice in the first place? And that's a big old huge conversation. But I get that. Relevant success. The game master shouldn't call for further checks to confirm this success. They've earned it. That's nice. Yeah. If you think an objective requires multiple checks, use a clock. And we'll get in that in a bit. And no do-overs. Yeah. Like, oh, I failed to pick the lock. Oh, but I'm a thief too. Let me try. Like, no, you picked the lock, you failed. That's it. I like that. I like that very much. Success at a cost. I like this as well. When a character fails a check, anyone may propose. Ooh, okay. I should read these optional rules, because this is specific. Baba Doctor says, I 100% believe a DM has fudged to not kill my characters. You'd think I'd be behind it, but it didn't feel satisfying. Yeah, it doesn't feel satisfying. It's not a satisfying thing to do. Partially because as a player, you want to, those are the stakes. You walk away going like, yeah, my character got to 0 HP or died or had something bad happen to them because of my actions. And luck. And those kind of stakes are what make tabletop RPGs exciting. You know, the fact that there is no reset button or do-over or things like that. I have, on the topic of fudging dice, I feel like I've talked about this before. It's either deja vu or something, but fuck it. I firmly believe that fudging dice is worth it only for, like, if a character is like killed a monster and it's just gonna take more time to be like, oh, it's got 1 HP left and other people gotta take their turns and stuff. It's like, nah, just like for the sake of time, yes, you have killed it, let's move it along. That's the only time I've ever really fudged dice or fudged results or even fudged DCs. You know, it's like, yeah, you've failed it just by 1, but that's what we're rolling dice for. It's probabilities, it's chance. Like, yeah, you're like, oh, but it's just by 1. And you go, yeah, it could have been also just by 2 or just by 5 in either direction. But yeah. So I like this. When a character fails, anyone may propose success at a cost. The game master can make adjustments to the cost as they see fit. And then the player who performed the check can accept or refuse. Okay. So anyone can propose. Now, wait a minute. They failed to pick the lock. Can they still pick the lock? And the game master could say, well, yeah, they do, but they don't catch it. So they pick the lock, and the big, large iron lock falls to the floor in front of the door, and it kind of ding, 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 and alerts him, and could potentially alert whoever's inside the room. Instead of that being the final word, it's the player who made the check that has the final word. That is fucking fascinating. Because that lets the player say, like, I like that like, I think that's neat, but I would rather somebody just try to break the door down and we still catch anyone in this room unawares, rather than we have successfully picked the lock. I like that kind of stuff. Muppet Doctor says, oh no, I love it when I deal like 20 damage and the DM was like, it had 2 hit points, how do you want to overkill this? Oh no, that I do all the time. Oh, I gotta turn on the light. That I will do all the time. Like if a player character like overkills an enemy and does a bang up job of it, yes, that's absolutely great. But like, I only really fudge results for like the interest of time, or just for the sake of alleviating a headache of like, we got another round, we gotta do all this stuff and potentially kick this thing in the butt. But like, never for climactic stuff, never for cinematic stuff, not for bosses, like, because that stuff you want to feel earned. And then, of course, like you mentioned, Muppet Doctor, like the thrill of doing so much damage. It's like, yeah, I was barely hanging on. Absolutely. You cannot succeed at a cost if your character fumbled the check. So a critical failure is still a critical failure. Invoking a trait to reroll die. Ooh. After performing a check, a player character may spend 1 Fabula point and invoke one of their traits to immediately pick up one or both the die and roll them again, replacing the old roll with a new one. They may do so any number of times as part of the same invocation, but each new reroll of one or both dice will cost another Fabula point. That's really cool. I like that. So it's like, yeah, you got a bunch of points, you're going to invoke this trait, just reroll a bunch of die over and over again. I really like that. Yep. That's really cool. Players should describe their actions in a way that's coherent with their identity, origin, or theme if they want to spend the point. Basically, you shouldn't do this when it feels forced within the narration. But then again, you as a player have final say on how and when you spend your Fabula points. Invoking a bond to improve your check. Okay, so yeah, you say like, oh, but I've got a bond with this player. You spend a Fabula point, invoke one of their bonds to add the strength of the bond to the result. So that is a modifier. That's neat. So when you invoke one of your own, you get rerolls, potentially. And when you invoke a bond, effectively like a trait you have with someone else, it adds to the result. Should only be invoked when it makes sense. Invoking to fail. I like this as well. If you use this optional rule, this is like Fate Core as well. Like you can optionally fail something because it's part of your character, and then you'll gain points or tokens for that as well. Once per scene, before making a check, so not all the time, a player may describe how the character's bonds or traits prevent them from achieving success. This is done instead of performing the check itself. Okay. We gotta get going, because this is taking so damn long. I'm sorry, I keep reading through everything here. This is great. Thank you, everybody, for spending time with me as I read through this. I really liked what I had read so far, but I really do want to get to like character creation, basic stuff, things like that. So, real quick, accuracy checks. Works like a normal attribute check, but is performed when a character wants to strike targets. Okay, so like an accuracy formula. Steel Dagger, for instance, requires a roll of Dex plus Insight plus 1. Okay, difficulty levels generally equal to the target's defense score. When performing an accuracy check, the high roll is used to determine how much damage you deal. That's slick, because that's just a single die. That's taking 2 rolls, throwing them into one. Makes it nice and simple and straightforward. Magic checks. This type of check works like a normal attribute check too, but it's used when a character wants to cast an offensive spell or perform a ritual. The attributes will depend on the kind of magic. When performing a magic check, the HR will sometimes be used to determine the effectiveness of the spell cast. Opposed rolls, this real quick looks like the same thing, like players roll the same thing, the same attribute check with no difficulty level. Whoever gets the highest results is the winner. Okay, yeah, same thing. Fumbles are the lowest possible result. Critical successes are the highest. They generate opportunities as normal. Critical successes, yes, absolutely. Okay. Open checks. Okay, I've done these before, but this is a name to it. Simply compare the result with the table. There's no difficulty level for these. The result tells us how well the character performed. So on a 7 or plus, what can be accomplished by a person with a bit of training or talent, all the way up to 16, a result worthy of being remembered in history. So yeah, it's like, yeah, you can pick the lock, but you're still making a check not to pick the lock, but how well you did it, or how stealthily you did it, things of that nature. Situational modifiers. If a character performs a check when in a strongly advantageous or disadvantageous position, the Game Master may impose a +2 bonus or -2 penalty. Okay. Very much like Pathfinder 2, where it's like, if you want to give a circumstance bonus, +2, -2, good places to start. Most of the time, you will not need to use these situational modifiers. However, they can prove useful. Okay. Good. That's all there. Group checks. Oh, that's neat. And this is different as well. So for a group check, instead of tracking successes or misses or things like that, instead, the characters nominate a leader. That's the character who's going to perform the check. Everybody else is a supporting character. They perform a support check identical to the one that the leader will perform, but with a fixed difficulty of 10. Fumbles and critical successes rolled generate no opportunities, but still count as failures and successes. Each supporting character that successfully performed the check grants a +1 to the leader's final check, and that's the one that determines success or failure for the whole group. If any of the successful supporting characters, so you have to make the check, have a bond towards the leader. The highest strength among those bonds is also added. Okay, remember, only add the single highest bond. The leader then performs the final check, which works as normal and may generate opportunities in the case of a fumble or a critical success. That check's outcome affects everyone who took part in it. So, an example of this. Good. 3 heroes are trying to persuade the Great Owl to grant them access to her ancient library. That sounds familiar. The leader performs a DL13 insight and willpower check. That makes sense. You're trying to get on someone's good side. This is a lot of trying to figure out what they're like and trying to wheedle away their mental defenses. And the 2 supporting characters perform insight and willpower checks, but with a difficulty of 10. They both succeed, and one has a strength 2 towards the leader. So each of those successes add 1, each for 2, and then that bond of a strength 2 adds another 2. Thus the leader's check will receive a total bonus of 4. That's great. So that means across the 2 die, they just gotta get a result of 9 or higher. That can be pretty good. So, and again, the characters nominate a leader. So in that case, the leader is someone that's got high mental scores. It's kind of like the face of the group. They might even get powers that add to that when that kind of check becomes relevant. So yeah, that's what group checks are. I like this implementation. It is a little longer than asking everybody for a check and did anybody roll this, this or higher. But it definitely adds stakes and it gets everyone involved. And I like that. Frequently used checks. Okay, just examples of that kind of stuff. I'm not too terribly worried about this. I've seen some people review Fabula Ultima and say, hey, there's too much. This can be too confusing. I respectfully disagree. You got 2 physical stats, 2 mental stats. 1 for aptitude, 1 for fortitude. They're 1 set for aptitude, 1 set for fortitude. It's straightforward. But in case it isn't, then you got all these examples there. Optional, shared attribute choice. If you use this optional rule, players can decide one of the attributes involved in each check, while the game master decides the other. That I probably wouldn't do. Just because that takes a little bit too long. Clocks, here we go. I learned about clocks from Blades in the Dark, and I'm going to be really quick with this, because I do want to keep going towards, like, character builds and character creation and things like that. But clocks are a way that I understood from here. They were introduced, I believe, in Blades in the Dark, which was a way to say, hey, this is a way to introduce tension through a series of checks, a series of rounds, a series of scenes or events that are happening with rising tension in it. So like the example you can see, there's a clock with 4, a clock with 6, and a clock with 8. And they're just split into sections, and when something happens, the game master or one of the players will fill in or remove one of those clocks. So an example of this would be like players are trying to sneak into the palace to steal away the princess, to ransom her off and get a bunch of money, which is literally the beginning of Final Fantasy IX. So you can say, okay, you can do that, but instead of just 1 check and you did it cool done, it can be to get to the princess. A series of checks, like when this clock is completely filled, you've reached the princess, right? So then this is like a series of successful checks. So it's going to take 4 or 6 or 12 or 20, however many you want, successful checks to get to the princess. You could also say, hey, here's another clock for that same situation. You could say, here's 4 checks to get to the princess. Here's 4 checks to alert the guards. Failing 4 checks, failure will fill up this clock. And if you fail on this failure clock and fill it all the way up, the guards are alerted to your presence and it gets a hell of a lot harder. Or for successful checks, you sneak through the castle, you do everything you need to do, and you find the princess, and then you could introduce a clock to get her out. So that's really what it's there for. Clocks are a way to introduce successes or failures in sequence in order to create tension, in order to create a sense of pacing as well. And I like that it says here as well, like, I think it's somewhere here. Clocks are generally created and managed by the game master, but should be visible to everybody. This makes for tense and adrenaline-inducing play. And never set the approach, but like tie it to a specific goal or a danger or something along those lines. Yeah, generally keep them present, because that's what it activates all the monkey parts of the brain and makes them go like, oh my gosh, there's something important, we got to do this thing. That's what that's for, and it just raises the stakes. This has been widely accepted as a great game mechanic since Blades in the Dark was introduced. And I agree. I didn't get it at first. It took me a while to understand it, but I wholeheartedly agree. Clocks are amazing game mechanics and can probably be fit in any game you run. A threshold for failure. So you can turn back a clock, or turning back a clock, things like that. Thresholds for failure, we talked about that. Other events, even clocks during conflict scenes. This is a really cool use that FU is introducing, which is chases, battles, audiences, or more. This can be like an objective that players can fulfill. So like you make an attack action or so, or you can try something else to fulfill an objective. And then using clocks for pacing and pressure. Again, we talked about that. Bonds, we kind of went over. There's all of these things. This is just going into bigger things. Creating a bond. You can do that in resting scenes. Strengthening a bond or erasing a bond. I like this though. Bonds are stronger than death. Even if a character dies or leaves your story, any bonds other characters had with them will remain until erased. And this is super cool. Because it means like, yeah, your character can die, but if other characters either fell in love with your character or greatly respected them or appreciated them or even hated them or things along those lines, you can keep those bonds and still invoke them to reroll die or gain pluses to checks and things like that whenever it's relevant. I think that's great. That is a fantastic storytelling tool. Conflict scenes. Battles. Structure. Yes. Determine which players actively take part. Discuss the goals of each participant. That's really just, if it's not a battle, right? If it's not a fight where the goal is to survive, it's going to be, here's what you're trying to do. Player characters perform a Dex, Insight, Initiative group check. The difficulty level for this check equals the highest initiative among the adversaries. So I think that means they have a flat value. Either that or adversaries make the same thing, and it's an opposed check. If the player characters succeed, the first participant to act each round will be someone from their side. If they fail, the first participant will be one of their foes. Conflict is handled after a series of consecutive rounds. During each round, the player character's side and the enemy side alternate taking turns, starting with one participant who has the initiative. Each turn allows for a single action, so the action economy is 1. You cannot choose to pass. And if one side outnumbers the other, keep alternating turns as long as possible. Once all creatures have taken their action, the round ends. If it continues, you go back to step 5 and keep taking turns. Otherwise, Game Master declares the end whenever they either deem it appropriate or one side is gone. You get the idea. So determining participants, discussing goals, initiative, there we go. Initiative group check, dexterity and insight. And there you go. And then after that, it's rounds and turns. And this is kind of neat here. I'll just go over it kind of quickly, but if the player characters are going, the player character or the players determine who goes first. So like they say here, in a conflict with 2 PCs and 3 NPCs, it's the PC turn, then the NPC turn. PC turn, NPC, and then NPC. So that means that players are determining who goes first in initiative every round based on when they want to go. And that adds for a lot of strategy. It doesn't seem like it. It slows down the game, it can, but it adds for a lot of strategy to the game. Because mainly, like, let's say you're playing a character that's a debuffer. You probably want to go first to debuff enemies, and then the enemies one enemy goes, they take their turn. And then another player will take their turn and be like, I want to hit the debuffed enemy. Or do something that makes the debuffed enemy check for the thing they're debuffed. So there's a lot of ways you can strategize that out. That might keep combat rounds at a still lengthy time frame. I haven't run this game yet, so I can't say for certain. But that could lead to analysis paralysis, where the game master says, okay, who's going first? And the player characters all kind of look around one another because they might all be too afraid to, you know, drive the bus or seem like they're stepping on other players' toes or things like that. But that's one way to do it. I like how it's done. It adds strategy to this game that otherwise might be a little straightforward. Spaces and distances. This is kind of interesting because everybody might line up on one side of the screen, the enemies are the other, like Final Fantasy. Keep distances and movements abstract in your descriptions. If you want to rush past the golems and snatch Cursed Grimoire from the wizard's hand, you can roll for that right away. It doesn't matter whether you're 10, 20, or 50 steps away. All that matters is who or what is going to try to stop you. I like that. It's just simply saying, yeah, like ranges, distances, things like that, doesn't really matter. You can pretty much abstract that away and get there. Unless something is so far away, you might not be able to get there. But even then, that's something you talk about. Attacks. The biggest difference between melee and ranged isn't the distance they cover, but the various skills that interact with and the ability or inability to target flying enemies and similarly elusive creatures. If you're thinking that fragile characters are made even more vulnerable by this approach, you're partially right. But that's where the guard action and the protect and provoke skills really shine. The ability to take a blow for your comrades become critical to victory in battle. So yeah, like if you're a melee fighter and you're encountering like a bunch of harpies, for instance, they're all flying in the air, then you might be like, well, I can't reach them, but let me cover or guard the person that can, the ranger, the caster who can hit them at range, the person that's throwing like daggers or shurikens or things like that. Split scenes, you can split things like, okay, but there's situations in which distances and positions are supposed to play an important role. What if there's a sniper atop a tower? What if a terrible ritual tears open a chasm in the middle of the battlefield? Boils down to the following. Don't overcomplicate it, and sometimes an experiment. If you want to introduce distance as an important element in the game, treat it like a puzzle that can be solved in creative ways while the conflict progresses. You might make melee attacks unless useless in a battle between two flying galleons. At that point, engaging in close combat will require approaching and boarding the enemy ship. Time for a clock. So yeah, things like that. That's really good advice, being like, you can introduce distance, but make it interesting. Require some other kind of check or thing to do. There's actions, there's minor actions to do. Generally, you can attack, you can switch any number of equipped items, you can guard, this is interesting, only once per turn. Until the start of your next turn, you gain resistance to all damage types, you gain a +2 bonus to opposed checks, and you may cover another creature and prevent foes from performing melee attacks against them. They can still be targeted with ranged attacks, interesting enough, but completely just says, nope, they're protected against melee hits. I'm going to protect this person against melee hits, period. End of discussion. Super neat. Hinder. You perform a check of 10 against an opponent. If you succeed, you inflict a status condition, which we haven't really learned about yet, but that is neat. I don't want to deal damage to something, I want to inflict a status condition. Inventory. You spend inventory points to produce and immediately use a consumable item. Objective. You work towards an objective. Spell. You cast a spell. Study. You attempt to gain information about someone or something. Generally requires a double insight check. Skill. Some skills require you to spend an action or other. You perform an action that's not covered by any of the above, negotiating its resolution and effects with the game master. Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. And there's things for like attacks, free attacks. Some game effects allow you to perform free attacks. These follow the procedure on the previous page of like an attack, but generally they take place as part of a different action. A few skills and effects might even let you perform a free attack with weapons that aren't part of your equipped items. That's pretty cool. You just like pull it out real quick. So like lots of HP. A vulnerable target loses twice as much, so double damage. Resistant means they lose half. Immune, they take no damage. And absorbing means they recover it. Multi. When you perform an attack with a multi property, you may select as many different targets as the specified weapon or effect allows. Multi 2 lets you target up to 2 different creatures. Rolling a critical success means you hit all the targets, and you perform a single accuracy check, and then just compare it to defense values. 2-weapon fighting. When you perform the attack action, if you have 2 weapons of the same category, like 2 swords or firearms, you may declare that you're attacking with both. You perform the 2 attacks in any order you prefer, and they may both be aimed at the same target or different ones, but the following penalties apply. Both attacks lose the multi-property, and which makes sense because you're already kind of doing that. And when calculating damage, the high roll is always treated as being equal to 0. Does that mean you deal no damage if you engage in 2-weapon fighting? Oh, no, I think that means you deal the lowest. That's confusing. Why don't you say when calculating damage, the low roll, or LR, or something like that? That would have been so much easier. Because if the high roll is 0, then you're using the other high roll, which is the lower of the 2 die. So you're still dealing damage, but not as much. Cannot use 2-weapon fighting when performing a free attack. Okay, gotcha. Equipment guard, more rules about that. I really want to focus in on inventory, because that's kind of interesting. Study is also kind of interesting, because you perform an open check, and the Game Master chooses the attributes based on the approach. The result will determine what kind of information you get access to. Once you've studied something or someone in this way, you cannot ask the same question again. So yeah, very cool. That's kind of neat. Especially for like this example, they're, you know, trying to figure out this noblewoman's desires, so they make a study check. Like, do you not? Trying to figure it out. Skill or other. Okay, cool. Teamwork! When a character performs a check during a conflict scene, any other character that is able to help them and hasn't already taken a turn may choose to lend the active character a hand. If anyone does, the check turns into a group check, with a couple of differences. Each helper is a supporting character while the active player is the leader, so you don't vote, that's just what it is. Every support check is automatically successful, and each character who supported the leader is then considered as having taken their turn within the round. So you don't really check, you just say you do it, and you're taking your turn out of turn. In other words, you can only help if you haven't already taken your turn, and doing so will burn your ability to act during the same round. Choose wisely. Okay, yeah. So this is a more straightforward aid or assist. D&D does this with like giving advantage to someone. Like if someone's going to attack, you can use your reaction to be like, oh, I point them out. They're over there, and now the attacker gets advantage. For Pathfinder, you literally make an aid check on your turn to assist somebody and give them a modifier. Here, straightforward and quick. One player says, I'm going to try to attack an enemy, and another player says, like, I'm going to help you out. Somehow, some way, they just do it, but it is automatically successful. The player taking their turn gets a +1 to the check, and the player helping out uses their turn. So that can be interesting. Ending a conflict, turn-related events, things like that, etc., etc. And these are goal clocks, or examples of goal clocks, which is kind of neat. Ways to make, I mean, that's just really a way to make a fight interesting, like bring it down with like a big winged dragon, or catching the thief, or something like that. That's a way to say this is a combat challenge. It's generally a challenging thing, but instead of just attack, instead it's you need to meet these objectives before the combat is done. Convince the queen. Yeah, there's another one. Keep them out. Stop the ritual. Yeah, there's a lot of examples here, which are really nice for like making combat interesting. Optional conflict rules. Ambushes and surprise rounds. That's kind of neat. Players outside the conflict that, you know, like people can fight inside of it. This one is neat, and I would probably use this one all the time. This battle superiority. Effectively, whenever you deal damage to an enemy with an element they're vulnerable to, you gain a superiority point. If you suffer damage, whenever you're suffering damage, if you're immune or absorb it, you gain a superiority point. And when you roll a critical success, you gain a superiority point. And if you fumble, you'll lose one. With the rule being, a character may spend 1 superiority point to perform an additional action on their turn, but they can only spend 1 point per turn. So this is a system that could allow people multi-attack, or to attack twice per turn, and that's for playing tactically, for, you know, like taunting enemies that deal a kind of damage you know you're resistant to, or realizing, oh, that enemy is weak to fire damage, like that troll is weak to fire damage, let's use fire magic on it. or even just critical hits. You gain these things and then somebody else can use them. But it's neat too because it's tug of war. Whenever your team is about to gain a superiority point, if the opposing team has one or more, instead you would gain no superiority point and they would lose one. So it even says, like, you might want to employ a tracker such as the one below. So it's a tug of war between you and the enemy. I think that's really neat. I think that's fascinating. I'd probably add that into every game of this I play. Just because it adds that little extra bit of like, meh. Hit points. This is kind of important. Current HP and maximum HP. You kind of get that. Crisis. This number is equal to half of a character's maximum HP, rounded down. If your current HP is at or below this number, you're considered in crisis, which means you're not looking good. You're having a bad day and it shows. For instance, a character with 65 max HP is in crisis when they have 32. Some game effects activate when you enter crisis. And 0 HP, if a character's current HP reaches 0, their fighting spirit is broken. So you're not necessarily dead, but something happens. And then MP, you spend that for powers and abilities or magic. 0 hit points. NPCs. When an NPC reaches 0, their character loses all will to fight. Whoever defeated them gets the right to determine their fate. They might be captured, forced to flee, knocked unconscious, or even slain. So any kind of damage can be lethal or non-lethal, doesn't matter, because it's determined by the person who caused them to get to 0 in the first place. That being said, some creatures might simply be destroyed. Constructs such as golems and robots might cease to function, elemental beings will vanish, and undead often crumble to dust. That makes sense. Villains. When reduced to 0 hit points, a villain might choose one or two options, escaping or surrendering. Villains also have a pool of points, like Fabula points, but called Ultima points. Kind of neat. When reduced to 0, a villain may spend 1 Ultima point and safely disappear from the scene. And the game master describes how it happens. This is so neat, because it allows for villains to get away and live to fight another day. There's a lot of game systems out there that don't have this kind of mechanic. There's a lot of game systems out there that are like, here's a villain, I've made them super strong, and they're gonna, like attack you twice and be like, you're not worth my time, and they leave. Or attempt to, but the players corner it, lock them down, and kill them. And there goes like half the plot. Here it can be like, you've reduced them to 0, but they go like, you guys aren't worth my time until we meet again. Throw down a smoke bomb and disappear. So there's a way to create, like, baked in, there's a way to create recurring villains. Because, like, they might come back. That'd be the whole point. You want them to escape because you want them to come back. Or surrendering. The villain surrenders and is treated as any other NPC. Their fate rests in the hands of those that defeated them. So yeah, they can surrender, they can be killed, they can be captured, what have you. Player characters. This is important. A player character must either sacrifice themselves or surrender. So sacrifice first. When reduced to 0, a player character may give their life in order to accomplish a seemingly impossible deed, such as putting an end to a centuries-old curse, temporarily taking away a demigod's powers, or single-handedly holding off a small army to make sure their allies can flee. You may only sacrifice yourself if at least 2 of the following are true. A villain is present, your sacrifice would benefit a character you have a bond towards, and you believe your sacrifice would make the world a better place. Okay. That's really cool, because it can't just be like, whatever, my character dies in the blaze of glory. Like, no, it has to be meaningful. The details of the sacrifice are negotiated between you and the game master. You should narrate your heroic demise together. There is no fixed limit on what a sacrifice may accomplish. You can and should go overboard with this, especially as you will permanently lose your character. Yeah. It is important to note that player characters who sacrifice themselves have accepted their death and normally cannot be brought back to life. Because there might be resurrection, I guess. Because they peacefully become one with the stream of souls. It isn't a bad way to go. Okay, so like stream of souls, but generally I think this says, let me read it real quick. Yeah, the mechanics of the game do not give you the option of bringing characters back to life for 2 main reasons. First, the death of a player character should be meaningful, and secondly, the mystery of the afterlife should be something you explore and shape together. Yeah, so, yeah, no resurrection unless it's really, really important or can make for a really cool story beat. Characters who surrender fall unconscious and become unable to act for the remainder of the scene, even if their hit points are restored above 0. Okay, so 0 is just, you're done for the scene. This is, wow, okay. The Game Master cannot kill a character who surrenders, but may impose a narrative consequence chosen from the list below, or a consequence that makes sense within the scene. If multiple characters surrender, or worse of all, if the entire group gets wiped out, the Game Master may impose separate consequences or a single major one. They may also decide to bring the consequences of your surrender into play later on. While surrendering will never kill your character, the Game Master can still impose heavy consequences. Given the mood of Fabula Ultima, however, permanent or crippling injuries should be avoided. I like this. This creates tension without intense tension. This is simply saying, as a Game Master, you don't want to get to 0 because you are taken out of the scene so long as the scene goes on. So yeah, in a fight, there's no Phoenix Downs, right? If you go to 0, somebody can't be like, I use a potion on them and bring them back. They can be raised above 0, but they still don't get turns. They're still taken out for that whole fight. Effectively, like, they've lost the will to fight. They've lost their fighting spirit for that fight. I really like that, because it means you don't want to get to 0. You still want to be careful, but it's not because your character's immediately dead and killed and murdered. It's just, they're out for the scene. And that's bad. That's bad news. Sample consequences of surrendering darkness. You must change your theme to, I guess, a negative one. Despair. The enemy gets to make a decisive move. Loss. Something incredibly precious, such as a magical artifact, your loved person, or an ancient or important heirloom is taken from you. Resentments. You're forced to erase one of your bonds and replace it with a bond towards a character chosen by the Game Master. This new bond must be of hatred, inferiority, or mistrust, your choice. Or separated. You are no longer with your allies. You might be captured, dragged away, lost, or stranded. That's also great. Yeah. I like that that's even noted. Like, yeah, that is an option. Resting. Here we go. Resting in the wilderness. A magic tent created by spending 4 inventory points. 1 tent is enough for the entire group. Hospitality from some friendly, usually in exchange for help or money, or a safe location where there's no risk of being attacked. A consecrated temple, a secret room, the inside of an armored transport, or an area protected by a magic circle. Resting inside settlements, a room inside an inn will cost money. Hospitality with someone friendly, usually in exchange for help or money. What does it do? They recover all HP and MP, and they recover from all status effects. Good! That's neat. Okay, so no, like, you get half, rounded down, you get this or that, just get everything back. When the heroes rest, this is a chance for a calmer, more intimate role-playing. This is known as a resting scene. I like that as well. It doesn't mean like, you all rest next day. It's like, no, you are resting. What happens here? At the end of a resting scene, each PC may do one of the following. Create a new bond, add a new emotion to an existing bond, or erase an emotion from an existing bond and replace it with a new one. That's really cool because they may do one of the following. This is a great way to incentivize players role-playing with one another, building camaraderie as characters in the group they've made, because those bonds are always going to be helpful. I like that. I like that a great deal. Damage, different kinds of damage. Okay, damage affinities, we already talked about that. Extra damage, improvising damage. Oh, this is great. Level 5 or higher, minor damage is 10. Heavy is 30, massive is 40. At level 40 or above, massive damage is 80. This is fantastic. So it's probably like for making monsters or traps or things like that. I really like that. And it's just like in groups of 10. Like, yeah, this is a big deal. Status effects. Yeah, real quick. Each of these just reduces a die size by 1, so lowers it by a step. So you still get to make checks and stuff, but they're less likely to hit high numbers and things. Okay. Recover through rest or specific spell skills or items. Okay. Fabula points. We've already gone through these. They can earn them through a variety of different things. They can spend them in a variety of different... Oh, we kind of didn't talk about how you can spend them. So you can alter the story, alter an existing element, or add a new element. You just, I want to spend it to do a thing. Invoke a bond. Add bond strength to a check. Invoke a trait to re-roll dice during a check. Or use a skill. Use a skill that requires Fabula points. This is fantastic. The ability to just say, like, I want something new to the story. I want to do something new. That is really, really cool. And there's examples of altering the story and all of that. Villains as well? Okay. So here's... Oh, this artwork. Slick as hell. Alrighty. So two things here. I'm gonna keep this up on the screen here. Let me ask the beautiful lady real quick. Hold on. Okay. Beautiful lady said that I can go a little later because this is usually around the time that we'd probably start wrapping up a little bit. I want to go through inventory points real quick because it's fucking fascinating, and then I want to look at some of the classes and kind of go through classes, kind of a little bric-a-brac. There's about 15 of them, but I want to go through that because that's a big part of this. Like, yeah, here's how we play. You roll 2 dice, add a modifier, do the thing you want to, rinse and repeat. Sure. Inventory points, however. This blew my mind when I read it. This abstracts inventory. So a character can normally.
You want some tea?
Well, I guess suppose.
You sure?
A character can normally carry a maximum of 6 inventory points. However, some classes and special skills will increase this limit. So, like, you have 6 inventory points. You're in a fight. You lost some HP. So you can say, I'm going to spend 3 inventory points to recover 50. Or 1 creature. So like your tank or your warrior, your fighter, is taking a lot of hits. And you're the healer, and you're like, well, I don't want to use a whole lot of mana, but let me use a remedy. Here they're called remedies. And that creature will recover 50 hit points. Or I need to cast a heal pretty soon, so I'm going to spend 3 to create an elixir and recover 50. And you just kind of like rummage around in your pack and you find it. Which means, like, because each of those costs 3, you can have 2 remedies, 2 elixirs, or 1 of each. A tonic will recover from a single status effect. And then there's utility. Elemental shards. 1 creature suffers 10 damage of a type of your choice. That's a great way to be like, I know this creature is weak or vulnerable to this kind of elemental damage. I, as a character, don't have a skill or a power or a weapon that does that, but I can spend inventory points to just deal a flat 10 of an element. And if they're invulnerable, they'll take double that. And if you're playing with superiority points, you'll get more. So great ways all around to interact with it. And then, of course, Magic Tent allows the entire group to rest. So you can spend inventory points to just be like, let's rest. Boom, you get all your stuff back. This is fantastic. I really like this. This just abstracts the idea of inventory instead of being like, oh, I have this many potions, I have that many potions, how many do we have? Who gets it? Who gets to have it? It just says you have inventory points and you use them as you see fit when the time comes, as you need to. Fantastic way to do it. And it even says you can recharge them when you're in a town, village, or other location that allows you to purchase useful gear. The cost is 10 zenits, or money, or gold, or what have you, for each inventory point they want to recharge. So you've used a remedy, you've got 3 points left, you want to like buy another remedy, 30 gold, 30 zenit, done. Character can never go above, characters are not allowed to redistribute their points among themselves, or effectively like share them as well. Journey and travel rules, real quick, I do want to go over this because I do like this. Because I like things where it's a little bit of a hex crawl, but not much. You're 2 days out, travel, let's say, from the city. You're trying to get to the city. Because you need to stop a potential assassination that's going to happen. And you figured out it's going to happen in the city. It takes you 2 days to get there. Okay, great. You make a travel check. And that determines whether you find something or have an encounter, whether or not you find something threatening. And the threat here is like threat levels based on weather, where you are, whether it's roamed by a bunch of monsters or not. And then you make a travel roll. And here you want to roll low. It says perform a travel roll. On a 6 or higher, the group encounters a danger. On a 1, the group makes an unexpected discovery. This is such a fun idea. Such a fun idea for when it comes to actually writing encounters or adventures for FU. because it says when the group is traveling, number one, it's not just like, okay, you get there, or I've got to come up with a bunch of different random encounters and find one. 6 or higher means they do have a random encounter. This is a random encounter generator when players are moving across the world. Obviously limited to how many they have per day, because you're only making 1 check per day. But then on the 1, like, you find a treasure, you find a thing, you get money, you find a cool item, you find a secret dungeon, which means you can go back there later if you want to, or go there now and kind of be surprised that it's there and plummet its depths or what have you. It's just super fun. It adds immediate tension to traveling, insofar as, like, yeah, there's tension, there's battle, there's things that go on, but you could also find something cool. I love this kind of thing. I love it. Another tool in the bag of the game master to make cool stuff occur for their players. Dangers, yeah, like minor damage, heavy damage. We've seen this before. Yeah. Discoveries, all sorts of extra stuff. Like, I mean, like they say here, an unexpected discovery. The entrance to an ancient ruin, a merchant caravan. A discovery is always a good thing. Discoveries are never bad. Dungeons, this is kind of neat because it says, like, you can abstract the dungeon. If you really want to, you can abstract the dungeon. Magic, real quick, we'll go over this. Spells are specific because they'll actually say, like, this is a spell, this is how it works. Rituals are complex. Unlike D&D, unlike Pathfinder, where you cast it as a ritual, there's set rules for it. Rituals here are abstracted. So there are no rules for rituals, or like no specific rituals. But you could create a ritual that says, I want my character to cast this ritual to detect magic in the area, or figure out what element of that magic is in the area, all sorts of things. And then between the player and the game master determine, okay, it's going to cost this much MP, it's going to have this kind of effect, it's going to last this long. You just kind of make it happen. It's generally things that might happen outside of a conflict, outside of a battle. But it's neat. I like it. It's neat. I think it's fun. Okay. Offensive damage, effects of all that, ending the effects of a spell, duration of a scene. If you cast a spell with a duration of scene, you can end its effect any time. The effect will also end if you die or fall unconscious, or if you leave the scene. Okay. Describing your magic. Yeah, you can absolutely describe your magic. Of course you should. If 2 spells have identical effects but different names, they do not stack. If the same spells cast more than once on a target, the effects will not stack. Okay, cool, neat. Yeah, rituals here. Characters might gain the ability to use ritual magic belonging to different disciplines. So the discipline of arcanism is willpower. Willpower might produce a magical effect based on the arcana. Or spiritualism. You sense the presence and feelings of creatures, just kind of general things. But they don't cause direct damage, they don't heal, they don't remove status effects, it's something else. And then the player and the dungeon master can be like, okay, this is a minor effect, bless you. It costs 20 MP, it's got a DL of 7, right? The higher up you go, the harder it is to cast, and the more mana it's going to take. All sorts of things. Rituals is group checks, you can cast them as a group, which is super cool, reducing the cost. All sorts of stuff. That's cool and neat. Zenit, it's gold. On average, 5 Zenit pays for a decent meal, 10 is enough to rent a room, 100 can fence you a bronze shield. Okay. All sorts of stuff. New items, obviously you can buy them. If there's rare items, you can make them. And also transport, I really like this because it tells you how... This little guy. Oh my god, this little guy down here in the corner. Transport literally tells you, like, here's how much it costs, and here's how it shortens the distance. Like, a flying mount can have 6 passengers on it, costs 2,000 Zenit, and it can cover 3 times the distance in a single travel check. I like that. Really, really cool. Really neat. And then equipment. Okay, so I think the one thing that's different here is that there's martial weapons as well. I love that all of this stuff is pixelated. This looks super cool. This looks straight out of like a strategy guide for Earthbound or Final Fantasy. I love it. But generally it tells you the same thing here, like a spear, light spear. It's one-handed, It's melee, no quality to it. Costs 200 Zenit. You're going to use Dex and Might for the accuracy to determine if you hit something. And of that check, the damage is going to be the highest roll plus 8. So if you want to wield a spear, you probably want to have your might and dexterity be really good, and like, you know, d10s or a d8 and a d10, or two d12s. Who are we kidding? Because you're going to add 8 to the highest result and deal that much in damage. Brawling category, there's iron knuckles, all sorts of stuff, and these are the same thing. Improvised, it breaks after the attack. Okay. But like an iron knuckle is something you can buy, and that adds 6. Otherwise, it's +2 if it's improvised, or +0 if it's nothing else. Projects. Oof. This I might get into another time, because this is like a downtime thing that you can do to make something really cool. But let's look at some examples, like the Discovery. This is a large airship. Provides no firepower protection. A Gatling Golem will act after the inventor's turn, dealing minor physical damage to a single target. However, it's extremely loud and highly experimental. Mag Boots, or Magitech Suit. So this looks like using downtime to create something other than like direct-to-gear. Underwater Helm, a magical mask that allows the wearer to breathe underwater. Like, you want a feature, you can spend time and money to start a project and get that feature in the form of an item in some way, shape, or form. Group dynamics, safe play environment. Lines and veils, very important. I like that as well. These terms were coined by Ron Edwards in Sex and Sorcery, and they are practical safety tools with a history of good results. Yes. Drawing a line, so you don't want this in the game. It won't happen. It didn't happen in your shared story. We'll never talk about it. When you veil, you say that the element's present. You don't want it to be expressly depicted or brought into the spotlight. So like the idea here is like if your veil is sex, it's your, you know, 2 player characters get together, they fall on the bed, and you pan to the fireplace, right? Like it's never going to be explicitly depicted, but you just kind of like, yep, but it's there, and we move away from it. A line is that that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen in the course of the game. And if it does, or a player character tries to bring it up, you just go, oh, nope, that's the line. Move away. Player character against character. I guess those are rules being like, that can happen if it wants to. Secrets. Ooh, that's neat. Okay. Leaving the group. That's neat. Press start. Look at that artwork. Look at this boy. Everything here looks so good. The artwork is so great. Session 0. Very important. And that's probably where you're going to make everything. Commitments and expectations, tone and theme, safety, rules and challenge. How hardcore do you expect your game experience to be? Are you aiming for mechanical optimization? Do you expect the game master to design extremely challenging adversaries? That's an important thing. As a player, letting your expectations known to the game master, like, look, we want a difficult game. We want to optimize, or we're just here for the story. Those are important expectations to put on the game master so that they know, okay, you know, like, this is what my players are going to respond to. This is what they're going to do favorably. World creation, again, very important. Shape of it, the map and technology, kingdoms and nations, all this stuff. Yeah, this is all Session 0 stuff. And again, I love this because it is all immediate buy-in from the players. We want to play in a techno-magic world. We all love Final Fantasy VII. We love Midgard. We love that kind of theme. We want to go like that grim dark. Great, cool. Who's the position in power? Are they siphoning anything out of the planet? Or what are they taking? Who are the rich and wealthy? How did they get that way? That kind of stuff. You start to build and build. And then tables. This is great. Like magic and technology. Magic is largely forbidden. Spellcasters are trained in academies and then hired by nobles. Magic was taught by dragons. Magic is a gift from the gods. All magic in the world comes from a single sacred location. That's like Fall of Magic. That's great. Kingdoms and nations. You know, roll one of those. Oh, and then there's locations. There's Doma. That's straight from Final Fantasy. Babel. Yeah, this is great. Salazar. Yeah, this is great. Thule. Ultima Thule. There you go. Yeah, like just a bunch of names and stuff. Historical events. The world is dying. The loss of important knowledge. A dimensional gate opens. Magic is slowly leaving the world. This stuff is great. And this is just like stuff to feed off of, right? This is fantastic. I love that kind of stuff. And they're good suggestions. They're interesting suggestions because they're vague but big. These are big suggestions. Like the ocean levels are rising. It's not like the planet's getting a little hotter. It's like, no, this is dangerous. Gods are forsaking the world. The world is plunged into darkness. The world is dark and we know these things are true. That's straight up from 10 Candles. And then group creation. Okay, so brought together by fates or guardians or heroes of the resistance, revolutionaries or seekers. Okay, so kind of determining what you want your group to be. What is the group dynamic? And I think they also say in the rules somewhere, or I imagine if it doesn't, you probably could change this at some point. Like, yes, you start off as seekers. You're all treasure hunters. And you come together and you search for a bunch of treasure and all that. And then you start finding treasure and only realize this treasure is also being sought after by the evil empire. And now, having found some of these treasures, you realize you need to stop what's going on. Now the group is a group of revolutionaries. And now they're going out inspiring others or leading the resistance or heroes of the resistance, what have you. Or you find out from the treasures you're finding, only those find them are ones chosen by fate and destiny. So now you're brought together by fate from finding these items. So yeah, I imagine that could change. And that's good. I would imagine that's a good thing. Changing that dynamic is good for storytelling. Character creation, here we go. Identity, theme, origin, boom, bam, boom. Identity creation tables, like a knight or a professor. Hey, a professor, archer, occultist, medic. Core concept, roll or choose up to 2. It's like you're a bard painter or bard factory worker. Adjectives and detail. So you're, like, say, like an animal-loving gunslinger of the 7 seas. There you go. Select a like non-human. Select a species such as dwarf, elf, saurian, half-dragon, or anything that would make sense in your world. Which is also true. On top of all this stuff, there's no races, there's no ancestry, there's none of that. You just make whatever the hell you want to make. Choose a theme, guilt, hope, mercy, vengeance. Great things that just drive your character, drive choices. And again, these are all mechanics. These are all mechanics that you say, I want to invoke this to gain a bonus. Same with your origin. Where are you? Where are you from? What city are you from? That, again, you can invoke as a bonus. Choose, and this is where we get to the meat and potatoes. So we'll stay on this until the end of the stream, and then I'll kind of give my thoughts so far on what I know of the system and the game, based on what I know so far. Everybody starts at level 5. Every character starts at level 5. That is the level 1 of this game. With every level you get a skill level. So right at the top of the game, level 5. You're going to choose 2 to 3 of these starting classes, whatever they might be. And for each level you put into that class, you get a skill from that class. So if you want to be like a Guardian 3, Lore Master 2, that means you have 3 skills in the Guardian class, 2 in the Lore Master class. Or you can get up to 3. So if you want to be a Dark Blade Entropist Weapon Master, you've got 5 points to put in all 3 of those classes. It can be 2, 2, 1, which is really the only way you're going to do that. 2, 1, 2, 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1, whatever that is. But yeah, it's either 2 or 3, any way that you want to do it. So when choosing a class, keep in mind they simply represent your current abilities. They don't impact your character's role in the narrative unless you want them to. If you're short on types or ideas, feel free to look at classic characters starting on page 172. So let's just take a quick look at that. 172, yeah, okay. So Alchemist, Black Knight, Gambler, Pirate, Ninja, Monster Mage, Healer. It's just an Orator and a Spiritualist. And this is great too, because this is like the quick start guide. Now I'm looking at it. Like if you want a healer, okay, you want to play a healer, great. Make your dexterity a d6, insight a d8, might a d8, and willpower a d10. Take 2 levels in Orator, give it encourage and might trust in you. Those 2 skills. And then in Spiritualist, take spiritual magic, 3 times and gain these his abilities: Cleanse, Heal, and Lux. And then you have that gear. You got a staff, Sage Robe, and 270 Zenith. Or you want to be a, where is it, Red Sorcerer. Yeah, that's the Red Mage. Straight up. Those are the stats you take. These are the stats you get. Put skills in these classes that are here. And then you have those things: a Rapier, Combat Tunic, Runic Shield, and 70 Zenith. And that's left. That's fast. Yeah, it can be that fast. It can be, and this is quite a bit. This is 2 full pages of like classic, they even say like classic character ideas. Troubadour, Valkyrie, Summoner, Spell Fencer. How is that different from Red Sorcerer? I don't know how that's different. It looks like they have fewer, they trade out 1 Elementalist skill for 1 Weapon Master skill. So Red Sorcerer is based more in casting spells. Spell Fencer is more, you want to fight more. Or you could just do this however you want. Like you could say, I like the Red Sorcerer idea, but I don't like those spells, I don't like those skills, or I don't like the stat distribution. That's fine. Do something else. I like that this is just there for inspiration. You can purchase starting equipment. Okay. And these allow you to equip martial weapons or things. Okay. And then again, another, we've already seen this page, but it's here again. Thank gods that this is here again. That way players aren't like flipping between the first section and the last section. It's all here. It's all together. I really like that. Name and finishing touches. And then a list of character names. This is amazing. Rosa, Zima, Connor, Fenra, Caspar, Jabari. I mean, hell, I'm going to use these names in any game that I run too. These are really good, nice, Mont Blanc. Really good, nice sounding fantasy names. I really like it. All right, let's go through these. Oh, this is cool. Immediately, I'm sold. Arcanist. Look at that artwork. God damn. Also, Avatar Chosen or Summoner. Their skills are Arcane Circle. You can dismiss an Arcanum, which I think is something that you can summon. Like your summon that you have to perform a spell action for free. And that little like star with the 4 right by it, that says this over here. This says that you can take that skill 4 times. And depending, that SL depends on how many you do it. So it says the spell you cast for free or as a free action must have a total mind point cost of your skill level times 5. So with 1, it's 5 MP or less. If you take it a maximum of 4, it's 20 or less. Arcane Regeneration, same thing. When you summon an Arcanum, you immediately recover your skill level in that skill times 5 hit points. Bind and Summon. You may bind an Arcana to your soul and summon them later. Game Master will tell you the details of each binding process when you first encounter the Arcanum in question. You may use an action and spend 40 mind points to summon an Arcanum you have bound. If you take the skill at character creation, you begin play with 1 Arcanum of your choice, chosen from the list. Other than that, you may only obtain new Arcana through exploration and story progression. So this doesn't even have a skill thing on it. Like you can take it multiple times, but you can. But it's based entirely on the story and whether or not you encounter it. And even then, you can obtain multiple Arcana because you aren't taking that skill again. So that's really neat. So this is like, I want to get this skill to be able to summon stuff, and like, I want that to be a big part of my story. Emergency Arcanum. As long as you're in crisis, we learned that half your HP, the cost for summoning your Arcana is reduced. And you can take that 6 times. So when you take that, you're like, I really want to, like, when I'm down and out, I want to be able to like summon a thing to end the fight and make it cheap. Ritual Arcanism. You may perform rituals of the Arcanism discipline as long as their effects fall within the domains of 1 or more Arcana you have bound. And here they are. Merging with an Arcanum. When you summon it, you merge with it. You can dismiss it. They have dismiss effects. And there's domains. So like Arcanum of the Gate, because we're just right here. Domains of space, travel, and the void. When you summon it, you have resistance to dark damage, and you get a +1 bonus to your magic defense. That's awesome. And when you get rid of it, you choose Oblivion or Warp. Oblivion, you choose any number of creatures you see. Each of them suffers 30 dark damage. This damage ignores resistances. Wow. Or warp. You teleport yourself and up to 5 other nearby willing creatures to a location you previously visited, if that location is within one travel day. That's incredible. So yeah, like you summon your Arcanum of the Gate to like gain resistance to damage. Like, so if you know a boss is gonna hit you real hard, you summon your Arcanum, you gain resistance, and then you get rid of it, 30 dark damage. The resistance to it, screw you. Or you can use that in a roleplay session. You're exploring around. You can shorten travel distances by a day. That's really cool. That's really nice. Oh, there's a bunch. Arcanum of the Oak, of the Grimoire, Knowledge, Revelations, Understanding. Oh, it me. Arcanum of the Sky, Arcanum of the Tower, Judgment, Protection, or Sacrifice. Ooh. Arcanum of the Wheel, Destiny, Speed, and Time. Oh, that's neat. Okay. But that, I mean, like, that's it. Like, we got a 2-page spread for each class, and then any extra information they need. And that's it for classes. Because from here, let's just do the math. You can spend 4 skill points here, another 2 for 6, another 1 for 7, another 6 for 13, and another 1 down here for 14. But I do know this. You can only gain 10 levels in any class. So you have to, from just this short list, it looks short, but from this short list, you can only pick and choose a certain number of these to gain or really invest in. So it's a lot without being overwhelming. The Chimerist, the Druid, the Shapeshifter, or the Wild Mage. Okay. Consume. After you deal damage to one or more creatures with a spell, if you have an arcane dagger or flail weapon, you recover mind points, and you can just make that better. Feral Speech, you can communicate with creatures of the beast, monster, and plant species. No check for that. You just have it. You just get it. You can talk to plants. Pathogenesis, when you deal damage to one or more creatures with one of your Chimerist spells. That's right, this is also the Blue Mage. Each of those creatures that share that species with the creature you originally learned the spell from is poisoned. Ritual Chimerism. You can perform rituals that fall within Chimerism. And then Spell Mimic. This is Blue Mage. When you see a creature belonging to the beast, monster, or plant species cast a spell, you may immediately choose to learn that spell as a Chimerist spell of your own. If you do, you record the species of the creature you learned it from. So when you first acquire the skill, you choose Insight and Willpower or Might and Willpower. From now on, your offensive spells will use the chosen attributes for the magic check, regardless of the attributes used by the creature. You may have up to your skill level plus 2 different Chimera spells memorized this way. If you want to memorize a new one, you must forget one of the old ones and replace it with a new spell. This is fascinating, because that's it for the Chimerist. There's no like, here's some example spells. So if you're building monsters and you have a Chimerist in play, you want to give those creatures spells so that your Chimerist can learn extra spells to cast and make themselves more powerful. That's literally blue magic in Final Fantasy series. Final Fantasy XIV literally works that way. You find monsters, you wait for them to use an ability, and then when you defeat the monster, you have a chance to learn that ability or spell, and then you can use it as a blue mage. I find this stuff fascinating, and it's just baked right in. Darkblade, yeah, the Dark Knight, or the Death Knight, or the Black Knight, or the Avenger. Agony, after you deal damage to one or more creatures, if you have a bond towards them, like maybe you hate goblins, you can recover hit points and mind points. So that's really cool. So like if you hate goblins and you're fighting them, and you have a bond, no invoking, you just get that stuff back. Dark Blood, as long as you're in Crisis, half HP, you have resistance to dark and poison damage. Heart of Darkness, once per scene upon entering Crisis, half damage. You may choose a specific creature you can see you don't have a bond towards, and if you do this, create a bond of hatred towards that creature. That can work really well with Agony. So you can do that like at the beginning of the fight, you have a bond with that creature, now you hate them, then you're hitting them and gaining hit points back. Painful Lesson. After another creature causes you to lose hit points, you may immediately perform a study action on that creature for free. If you do, you gain a bonus based on how much you've invested, your skill level to the check. That's great. That's awesome. That's fantastic. And Shadow Strike, you have learned to channel your vital forces into the attack. You may use an action to perform a Shadow Strike. Roll your current might die and lose an amount of hit points equal to the number you roll. If this didn't reduce your hit points to 0, you may perform a free attack with a weapon you have equipped. If this attack hits one or more targets, it deals extra damage equal to your skill level in Shadow Strike plus the number rolled on the might die. However, all damage dealt by this attack becomes dark and its damage type cannot be changed. That's great. Just like 2 attacks for a little bit of HP. So the Dark Blade plays a lot with their own HP, bonds towards enemies, and just being like a literal Dark Knight. I love that. Very evocative. I really like it. Elementalist. We got our caster, Battle Mage, Geomancer. I rarely see something like that in a game like this. Or Sorcerer. When you cast an instantaneous spell, if you have an arcane weapon equipped, you may increase the spell total's MP cost by up to your skill level times 10 mind points. If you do so, and the spell damages creatures, it will deal 5 extra damage to each creature for every 10 mind points by which you increased its MP cost. That's interesting. That is a way to... Okay, that's a little bit of gambling. Because you do this... When you cast a spell, you may increase the number, if you do so, and it hits. So yeah, you have to do this before you determine whether or not damage is dealt. That's fascinating. Elemental Magic. Each time you acquire the skill, learn one of the Elementalist spells. Next 2 pages. So you can learn 10 spells. So you can literally just, if you're like, I want like offensive magic, you dip into Elementalist and just take Elemental Magic 10 times. And then you can't take anything else, but you're like, I know 10 spells. Boom, bam, there you go. Magic Artillery. When you cast an offensive spell, if you have an arcane weapon equipped, you gain a bonus to the magic check, which is your skill level times 2. So that can be up to 6. That's fantastic. You just make sure you hit. Ritual Elementalism. You may perform rituals to the Elementalism discipline. That's cool. Spellblade. Ooh. Oh, this is the Gish. This is the Gish. This is the Red Mage. When you cast an offensive spell targeting a single creature, the spell has a total mind point cost, and it has, if the spell has a total mind point cost of your skill level times 10 or lower, and you have one or more bow, brawling, dagger, flail, spear, or sword equipped, you can choose one of those weapons. If you do, your magic check for the spell will use the chosen weapon's accuracy formula. For instance, the magic check for an elementalist spell cast through a bronze sword will be dexterity and might +1 instead of insight and willpower. Because normally that's going to be, if you're casting a spell, it's going to be insight and willpower, or 2 insight or 2 willpower. It's all the mental stats. So this means, like a Spellblade, you cast it through a true Gish, you cast the spell through a weapon and instead use your physical stats to cast the spell. Instead, you do that if you want to focus on fighting. That's really cool. And the more of this you take, the more powerful spells you can cast through weapons. That's amazing. And then we got all our spells. So like Flare. Offensive. Costs 20 MP, 1 creature, instantaneous. You channel a single ray of fire towards your foe, its temperature so high that it will pierce through most defenses. The target suffers highest roll +25 fire damage, and it ignores resistance. So this is just straight up, I want to deal damage to something, I want it to be fire damage, ignore resistance, all of that. It's 25 plus your highest roll. So this is big, but it costs 20 MP. So it might not be something you use a lot of, but it hits hard. So you'd probably want, if you really want to go like heavy into spell casting, you probably want to get the magical artillery a bunch. To make sure you're making those checks to increase like what you get from that. Ventus, Vortex, all of these things. Vortex, a roaring gale surrounds you, blowing away arrows and bullets until the spell ends, and it's got a duration of scene. So until the scene ends, you gain a +2 bonus to your defense against ranged attacks. That's cool. Entropist, Astromancer, Chaos Mage, Gambler. Ooh, okay. Absorb MP. After you suffer damage, you may immediately recover mind points. That's great. equal to 2 times your skill level in it. Entropic magic, you learn a spell of the entropy. So same thing, you could take that 10 times, get a bunch of spells. Lucky 7, you have a lucky number. At the beginning of each session, that number is 7. Once per scene, after you perform a check, you may replace the value shown on one of the dice you rolled with your lucky number, even if this would give you an impossible result, such as a value of 7 on a d6. If you do, the replaced value becomes your new lucky number. Okay, so once per scene, you can replace the value shown on one of your dice with your lucky number. And the replaced value becomes your new lucky number. Okay, so this is a great way to be like, oh, okay, that's great. That's like assurance. That's like divination in D&D, where a divination wizard can roll a die and they're like, okay, and they store it. And then later on, somebody makes a check and they go, no, I rolled this. Same thing. So you could be like, if you fumble a result. You go, no, one of those is a 7, and save yourself from a fumble. But that lucky number is now a 1. So if you want to use it again, you got to replace it with a 1. Things like that. That's really cool. I really like that. That's a cool feature. Ritual entropism. Rituals with entropism discipline. Stolen time. During a conflict, you may use an action to interfere with the flow of time by spending up to your skill level times 5 mind points. For every 5 you spend, choose one option. One creature you can see suffers slow, or one creature you can see recovers from slow, or one creature you see may immediately perform the equipment action for free, like trading stuff in and out. Or choose an ally you can see who has yet to take a turn. They can take their turn immediately after yours during this round, because normally you switch back and forth. You know, like the PCs go, the enemies go, the PCs go, the enemies go. Instead, you can just be like, I'm going to take my turn, then you're going to take your turn, then the enemy gets to go. That's really cool. Each option can only be chosen once per use of the skill. So the more you invest, the more various options you can take. That's cool. And then a bunch of entropy spells. Gamble. Oh my gosh. Yep, up to 20. Spend some stuff. Random effect. I love it. Omega. Whew. You invoke Doom on your phone, turning strength into frailty. Target loses an amount of hit points equal to 20 plus half the target's level. Wow. That's great. Drain Spirit. Drain Vigor. Umbra. That's really cool stuff. Fury. This artwork is so cool. So this is like the monk. Yep, Berserker, Brawler, Viking. Oh, okay. Fury skills. Adrenaline. As long as you're in crisis, half health, you deal your skill level times 2 extra damage. So you want to be hurt. You take that, you're just like, don't heal me. I work best under pressure. Frenzy. Your accuracy checks with Brawling, Dagger, Flail, and Thrown weapons trigger a critical success if both dice show the same number. Wow. That's amazing. And the check is not a fumble. So double 1s, still a failure. But double 2s, critical hit. Immediate success. Double 3s, critical hit. That's fantastic. That's really cool. Indomitable Spirit. When you spend 1 or more Fabula points, you gain an additional benefit. You either recover hit points or mind points, or from a status effect, based on how much you invest. That's cool. Provoke. Here we go. So this allows like a monk to also become a tank. You may use your action, spend 5 mind points to perform an opposed might and willpower check against a creature you see. Describe how you taunt them. The target suffers enraged and is compelled to focus their attention on you. This compulsion ends if you fall unconscious or leave the scene, if the creature is no longer enraged, or if they are successfully provoked by somebody else. That's awesome. And again, you gain a bonus check for the skill the more you invest in it. So you don't even have to go into this class to say like, I want to be good with fists or fighting, just like I really want to be a tank. I really want to provoke enemies. And then Withstand. When you perform the guard action, if you choose not to provide cover, you recover hit points equal to your skill level multiplied by the highest strength among your bonds, and choose Might or Willpower. You treat the chosen attribute as being 1 die size higher until the end of your next turn. That's fantastic, because both of those dice are also used in a provoke check. So you could immediately, you know, be like, I'm going to withstand, guard, heal. Next turn, I'm going to provoke, and I have a higher die size. And if I've invested in it, plus a modifier to make sure I really do it. And then I provoke them, great. I'm going to guard myself again. Gain resistance to damage, heal myself. That's awesome. Guardian. Paladin, Soldier, or Yojimbo. Okay. Bodyguard. If you perform the guard action and choose to provide cover, that creature gains resistance to all damage types until the start of your next turn. That's awesome. Just straight flat out. That's what you want to do. Defensive Mastery. As long as you have a shield or martial armor equipped, all damage you suffer is reduced by your skill level in that skill. Applied before damage affinities. So you reduce the damage and then you're vulnerable to the rest, or then you absorb the rest. Good or bad. Dual Shield Bearer. You may now equip the shield in your main hand slot. As long as you have two, you gain the benefits of both items and may treat them as the following combined two-handed melee brawl weapon. So not only do you get to increase your defense, because that's what shields do, but you can also attack with them, and the attack is just might and might, and you deal highest roll +5. And you deal extra damage equal to your skill level and defensive mastery. Oh my god, so that's literally, I want to deal some extra damage and reduce a lot of damage. Fortress, permanently increase your maximum hit points by your skill level ×3. So like up to 15. And Protect. When another creature is threatened by an attack, spell, or other danger, you may take their place. Any checks that are part of the danger will be performed against you. You may declare the use of this skill before or after the checks have been made. That's great. So you don't have to worry about doing this if it's not going to hit. If the danger already affected you, it affects you twice. You also cannot protect multiple creatures from the same danger. If you use this skill during a conflict, you can't use it again until the start of your next turn. So kind of like a reaction, but it lets you immediately just be like, oh, nope, and you take it instead. That works great with Defensive Mastery. It's not the guard action, so you can't combine it with Bodyguard, but hell, combine that with Defensive Mastery and Dual Shield Bearer, and yeah, you're reducing a lot of damage. Lore Master. Archivist, Sage, Scholar, yeah. Give me the fairies. This is the Book Learner, Professor, something along those lines. Flash of Insight. When you roll a 13 or higher on a check to perform to investigate a creature, or like using the study action, you may ask the Game Master up to your skill level extra questions concerning the subject. You may ask these questions immediately or save them for later. The Game Master will answer truthfully. That's great. Just get information. Scan, but better. Focused. Permanently increase your maximum mind points. That's cool. When you perform an open check, you gain a bonus equal to your skill level. So any open checks, but it only applies to open checks. Well, that's great. So that's pretty much, you know you're going to make it. You're just improving your chances by how much and how good you're doing it. Knowledge is power. When you perform an accuracy check, you may replace one of the attribute die with insight. That's fantastic. So this is like like an investigator. If you want to play someone like Sherlock Holmes, you can take this. You have a high insight. You might be a caster in something else, but then you can also say, yeah, my insight's a 12. I'm always going to roll a d12 for any accuracy check I make, such as insight and insight for pistol, or insight and might for a war axe. Normally those might be dex. Quick assessment. At the start of a conflict, you may spend up to your skill level ×5 mind points. For every 5, choose an option. Choose a creature you can see, and the GM reveals one trait, or name a damage type and choose a creature you can see, and the GM reveals that creature's affinity towards the damage type. That's fantastic. At the start of the conflict, so you can be like, start a fight, I've got these options, let's figure stuff out before you even take a turn. That is so helpful and helps with strategy so much. That's great. That's a great tactical option without having to worry about distance or positioning or anything along those lines. Trained memory. You may perfectly recall the details of any scene you visited within the past week. You can go back in time to do that. Okay, very cool. Orator. Ambassador, Diplomat, Entertainer, the Face. Hey, the Face group. Condemn. You can use an action and spend 5 mind points to perform an opposed check against a creature that can hear and understand you. Describe your accusations. If you succeed, the target loses a number of mind points and suffers dazed or shaken. And you gain a bonus. So that can be really good in combats, in fights. That's literally just, I debuff you. Encourage. During a conflict, literally during a conflict, you may use an action, spend 5 mind points to choose another creature that can hear and understand you. They recover hit points, and you choose one of the 4 stats, or one of the 4 attributes. They treat the chosen attribute as being 1 dice size higher until the start of your next turn. Fantastic. Immediate buff. Immediate buff and a heal. The heal gets better the more you invest in it. My trust in you. After another player character who is able to hear you performs a check, you may spend a Fabula point and invoke one of their traits or bonds in order to let them reroll dice or improve the result of the check, following the normal rules. Okay, so like you can invoke one of their traits to let them reroll, or a bond, and that uses your Fabula points instead of theirs. That's really cool. Then, if you have a bond towards that character, they recover mind points. Immediately, the orator is the bard. And I love it. This is really good. Persuasive. When you successfully perform a check to fill or erase sections of a clock. If your approach relied on charm, diplomacy, deception, or intimidation, some kind of thing you're doing, you may spend up to a certain number of mind points. If you do fill or erase additional sections of that clock, for every 20 you spend that way. Wow. Unexpected ally. You may use an action and spend a Fabula point to choose a non-hostile creature able to hear and understand you. If you do, that creature becomes helpful towards you, so long as you are kind and respectful to them and your requests are reasonable. Awesome. Rogue. Here we go. Cheap shot. This one's kind of self-explanatory, but sure. Cheap shot. If you hit a creature, if the attack only targeted that creature and they're suffering from 1 or more status effects, you deal extra damage. Which is your skill level plus the number of status effects on the creature. Sneak attack damage. There you go. Dodge. As long as you have no shields and no martial armor equipped, your defense score is increased by your skill level in it. High speed. At the start of a conflict, you can spend 10 mind points. If you do, choose an option and apply it. Perform a free attack or perform a hinder or objective action. You also gain a bonus equal to your skill level to all checks as you perform as part of the action or option. See you later. You may use an action and spend a Fabula point to vanish from the current scene, reappearing whenever you want during a different scene in which another player character is present. That's awesome. You're just like, nope, I'm out. Bye. See you later. And then you just come back like, yeah, I was here the whole time. What happened? Yeah, I went back to the ship. I just fine-tuned some stuff. And now I'm here. Here we go. Soul Steal. You may use an action to perform a dexterity willpower check against the magic defense of a creature you can see. If you succeed and the target is a soldier, you recover inventory points, literally just stealing from them. If they're an elite or champion, which is just a harder enemy, the GM gives you the target's soul treasure, an item worth an amount of zenith equal to or lower than the target's level multiplied by 30 or by 50 if they're a villain. The soul treasure will appear inside your backpack. The creature can be successfully stolen from with this skill only once, and you gain a bonus to the check the more you invest in it. So this is a great way. If you have a rogue in the party and they're like, I really want to play a rogue, then you're really looking to like attach like every elite or champion enemy, you're attaching something to it, because then your rogue goes, I want to steal something. Like, I want to see if I can steal something from you. And they immediately feel rewarded from it. Sharpshooter. This is an archer, gunslinger, or a sniper. This is how you get it. Barrage. When you perform a ranged attack, you can spend points to make it multi. Crossfire. When you, after a creature you see performs a ranged attack, you may spend an amount of mind points equal to the total result of their accuracy to have the attack fail automatically. Wow. You can only use this skill if you have a ranged weapon equipped, and it has no effect if the accuracy check was a critical success. That's fantastic. That's so good. That's clutch. That's literally like you shooting an arrow out of the sky or splitting an arrow in half. That's so cool. Flavor, that's so cool. Mechanically, that's really cool. And it's totally defensive. I like that. I like it a lot. Hawkeye. When you perform the guard action, if you choose not to provide cover, you may choose one option. The next ranged attack you perform before the end of the current scene will deal extra damage. Or you may immediately perform a free attack with a bow you have equipped, treating your high roll as 0 when calculating damage. So a free hit, but it's not that strong. But it allows you to take less damage. So if you really got to focus in on defense, you can be like, I'm going to guard myself, get a free attack anyway. take less damage. Ranged weapon mastery. You get a bonus equal to your skill level to all accuracy check with ranged weapons. Again, you just want to take that if you want to be the gunslinger. If you just want to be like, I want to make sure I hit shit. Warning shot. When you hit one or more targets with a ranged attack that would deal damage, you may have the attack deal no damage. If you do, choose an option. Inflict shaken on each target, or inflict slow on each target, or have each target hit lose mind points. Describe your maneuver. That is a great, if you know you're fighting like a spellcaster, you can warning shot them, have them reduce like mind points. They're less likely to cast spells. You could shut down like an enemy healer that way. Again, there's a lot of tactics in these skills without worrying about distance, positioning, flanking rules, sneak attack damage, anything. You just like, I want to have this skill, to have the ability to do this at some point if I want to, or you make an ability to do this. So like you make like a Hawkeye warning shot build to be like very defensive, very reactionary, but when you do something, it stops it from happening. Spiritualist, healer, priest, or witch. This artwork's so good. This artwork is so cool. Look at all this artwork. It's so cool. Look at that. All right, let's get through this. Quick. Healing power. When you cast a spell that targets one or more allies, if you have an arcane weapon, you may have each of those allies recover an amount of hit points equal to your skill level, multiplied by the number of bonds you have. By the number of bonds you have. Yeah, so number of bonds are strength of bonds, yeah. This healing is separate from any healing caused by the effects of the spell. Ritual spiritualism, you can cast rituals with spiritualism attached to it. Spiritual magic, you get to, like elementalists and all that before it, you can learn 10 spiritualist spells, or up to 10. Support magic, when you cast a spell that targets one or more allies, if you have an arcane weapon equipped, you may choose one of those allies you have a bond towards. If you do, that ally gains a bonus to the next check they perform during the current scene. This bonus is equal to the strength of your bond towards them. That's fantastic, because you could probably use this as bonuses. It doesn't have to necessarily be just heals in a fight. You get like, I'm going to give you a buff, and I have a bond with you, you know, and I've also got healing power as well, so I do all these things, and they stack. Boom, 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 boom. Vismagus, when you cast a spell, if you don't have enough mind points to pay for the total cost, you may choose to spend twice as many hit points instead. You cannot use this skill if doing so would knock you out. If a spell cast this way would cause you to recover hit points, you instead recover none. The spell functions normally on any other target. Okay, so yeah, a way to just be like, I don't have enough, I can use hit points instead. Soul Weapon, Mercy, Lux, Light Damage, Awaken. See, yeah, so like this lasts a whole scene. Choose one attribute and you increase the die size. You could use something like Awaken and have support magic. So you give them an increased die size. You also have a bond towards them. So you also give them a bonus. So you're increasing the die size and giving them a bonus and doing this and doing that. Whew. Tinkerer, Alchemist, Magitech, Engineer, or Mechanic. So they permanently increase their inventory points by 2. So they have a bigger inventory and they can initiate projects. This is the only way to do it. You gotta be a tinkerer or have a tinkerer in the party. Emergency item. Once per conflict scene, if you're in crisis, you may perform an additional action on your turn. It must be an inventory action. That's great. Like, oh my gosh, I'm hurting pretty bad. I'm gonna hit somebody and then heal myself. And there you go. Gadgets. When you first acquire the skill, choose a gadget type. Alchemy, infusions, or magitech. You gain its basic benefits. Whenever you take the skill again, choose an option. You gain the basic benefits of a new gadget type, or you gain the advanced benefits of a gadget type when you already have the basic ones. Or you gain the superior benefits if you already have the advanced ones. Potion Rain. When you create a potion that restores a single creature's HP and MP, you may have it affect up to your skill level additional, up to 2 additional creatures. If you do, the potion only restores half the normal amount of HP and MP. So you could formula. When you create a potion or magisphere whose effects restore HP or MP, each restored amount is increased by how much you put into it. When you create an elemental shard, potion, or magisphere that deals damage, it deals extra damage. Visionary. When you work on a project, Up to your skill level times 100 zenith of material costs are automatically paid. Additionally, you generate an additional skill level progress each day. If multiple characters with the skill work on the same project, the effects will be cumulative. That is awesome. So invention types, there's alchemy. Let's see here. So like the effect, you rapidly create a potion that does a thing. As effect 9, but with darkened elements, suffer and rage, recovers hit points, all this stuff. Infusions. When you successfully hit a target with an attack, you may spend 2 inventory points to produce a special infusion and apply the corresponding effect to it. So like dealing extra damage, or like that's basic, this stuff is advanced, this stuff is superior. Okay, super cool. Oh, okay, so like alchemy, it's either roll 2d20s, roll 3d20s, or roll 4, and assign 1 to target and 1 to effect. Oh, okay, so like if the die was 1 to 6, you were 1 ally, which you can see, and if it was a 3, one of them would suffer 20 air damage. Okay, so superior just gives you, like, so these options give you more flexibility with your alchemy. Infusions gain you more access to damage types, and Magitech lets you do something with constructs. You can control them, you gain access to a weapon, and then Magispheres, whatever those do. How many more do we have? Let's see. 2 more. Okay, 2 more. Let's blast through them. Wayfarer, adventurer, explorer, treasure hunter. I think these also get a pet. Yeah, wait, faithful companion. Here we go. So if you want a pet, if you want to be the Beastmaster, here you go. This is how you do it. Together with the rest of your group, design a level 5 beast, construct, elemental, or plant creature that becomes your companion. With the rules on page 302. So like the rules for making a monster, make a monster that becomes your companion. This creature has no initiative score and does not level up. Can have up to 2 basic attacks. Gain a bonus equal to your skill level to accuracy checks and magic checks, and their maximum hit points are equal to your skill level multiplied by the companion's base might die size, plus half your level. Okay. Okay, so yeah, you want it to have like high might, increase its HP. Okay. Your companion doesn't get a turn during conflicts, but on your turn, you can use an action to have the companion perform an action. Only once per turn. If you leave a scene, your companion leaves with you. If your companion falls to 0, they flee and rejoin you at the start of the next scene in which you are present with HP equal to their crisis score. When you rest, your companion also gains the full benefits. So that's kind of neat. So you really want to pair Faithful Companion with other classes that give you free actions. Whatever those might be, because they have up to 2 basic attacks that they can make. Or if you have a free action or get a free action, then you can have them perform an action. So you kind of want to combo that out a little bit. Resourceful. You recover skill level of inventory points after each travel roll. So you just keep gaining inventory back. That's nice. No roll for that. Just whenever you roll, you gain that back. Tavern Talk. When you rest at an inn or tavern, you can ask the Game Master up to 3 questions about your surroundings and the people who live there. The Game Master will answer truthfully and describe how you gather that information. That's nice. That's the face. More of the face, but just kind of carousing around. Treasure Hunter. When your group journeys on the world map, you will make a discovery on a roll of your skill level +1 or lower. That can be up to 3. So look, I think it's like a D6. So instead of on a nat 1, it's a 50-50 chance you'll make a discovery. Because you're a treasure hunter. That is fantastic. And while travel, you reduce the die rolled for your travel rolls by 1 size to a minimum of D6. So that just makes dangerous areas easy for you to get through. If multiple characters have this skill, the effects are not cumulative. Okay. So it only reduces it by 1, and you can't take it multiple times, but that's okay. Pretty cool. I like that class a lot. That's very spirit of adventure. You always have inventory. Traveling's less dangerous. You get info from inns and all that. It's very, each one's different, but they feel very adventure-y. This feels like the class to like dip into. Like I want a little bit of this because adventure. You know, like, or I want a little. You really dip in a faithful companion because you're like, I really want a beast. I really want to have some kind of companion. Weapon master, fighter, ronin, or a warrior. So this literally is just, I know how to use weapons a bunch. Bladestorm. When you perform a melee attack, you can spend 10 mind points to choose one option. It gains multi. You increase the attack's multi property by 1, up to a maximum of 3. Nice. So yeah, just bunch of hits. Bone Crusher. When you hit one or more targets with a melee attack that would deal damage, you may have the attack deal no damage. If you do, you can either inflict dazed, weak, or they lose mind points. So the same with the Ranger. Same with the what are they called? Sharpshooter. Same with that. It's the same with the Warning Shot, but for them it's melee. You could literally create a class that just does this for ranged or melee attacks. Like whatever you do, you could be like, actually no. Breach. You may use an action, spend 5 mind points to perform a free attack with a melee weapon you have equipped. This attack must target a single creature. The attack is successful, deals no damage, and you choose to destroy a shield equipped by them, or destroy the target's equipped to armor, or whenever the target suffers damage from a source before the start of your next turn, it deals your skill level ×2 extra damage to them. That's awesome. Just like immediate poison, get stuff done. Counterattack. After an enemy hits or misses you with a melee attack, so pretty much whenever they're going to attack you, if the result of their accuracy check was an even number, you may perform a free attack against the enemy. After their attack has been fully resolved. This attack must be a melee attack and must have that enemy as its only target. And then you treat a high roll as 0, so you deal less damage. You use the lower result instead of the higher result. I don't know why it's written that way, but that's not bad, and that's kind of neat. If the result is even, then you get to make a free hit. Melee weapon mastery. You get a bonus to all your accuracy checks with melee weapons. So immediately, and again, like as you level up, you'll gain more HP, you'll gain more NP, but then you also will gain a skill to put into another class. You gain another class skill. And I do know that whenever you master a class and you get up to 10, it's mastered. You get a master skill ability, and then you can't invest in that class anymore and you have to choose another. And you can only ever have 3 unmastered classes at any one time. All of that is a very long way to say, and I'm gonna have this, I want this list up here. This also I think is really cool. For the Game Master, like if you have a Chimerist, it literally says build scenes when the conflicts between nature and technology are central, or include multiple creatures from which the Chimerist can learn spells, right? The Rogue, if you have the Rogue, put items on things, right? Like this is tips for the Game Master for each class that's in play and what you generally want to do. Fantastic. Then there's the art of the villains and all that stuff. There's generating dungeons and all sorts of things. There's rewards, interesting rewards, as well as like designing extra weapons like the looting bow. And here's the stats for it. You can just give that or change it a little bit, make it a little different. And there's ways to create your own different items or all sorts of different stuff, as well as battles, building encounters for all of that. That would be neat. If viewers really want, if y'all really want me to go through this again, I will, and kind of go through the Game Master Guide and generally how to run it, go through the bestiary and all that. But I really want to, oh, that's nice. I really want to look at this because it's just a list of all the inspirational works that these folks have taken to. This page on the left is literally all video games, and the other side is other works like anime, books, IPs, you name it. But generally speaking, what do I think about this? I am really excited about this, and I am going to run this professionally. And even privately, I'm gonna ask like friends, free company members, people that I know if they would be interested in this at all. Reason being is because this is quick and easy, right? Like you make a check, you roll these 2 die, add a number to it. If it's like a fight or you're trying to deal damage to it, it's the high result of those 2 die. So a single check is down in 2. Initiative is a group check, and then you just determine who activates in whatever order. Don't have to worry about distance, don't have to worry about positioning. Everything is abstracted. So Theater of the Mind works out really well, or you can build maps and just kind of move little minis around, you know, haphazardly. It doesn't really matter too terribly much. But a lot of that is abstracted, so it just gets out of the way and makes for fast gameplay, which I really, really like. My only real criticism for this game, honest to God, that I can see right now from what I've learned, Fabula Ultima, which is what this game is called, last I can remember, is literally that. I can't remember the title of this RPG. It does nothing to sell what this RPG is or what it's about. It does nothing to insinuate this is a JRPG or it's emulating a JRPG. I can't even remember the name of this damn game half the time. And I'll probably remember it as FU for the rest of my life because its acronym is FU. You got D&D, P2E, POTA for Powered by the Apocalypse, and FU for Fabula Ultima. I'm just never going to remember the name of this damn thing. It's always going to take me a while. So FU, yeah, which is bizarre, but there you go. Does this actually simulate a JRPG? I would say yes. Inventory points are great to just be like, I need something right now. Let's not get lost in the sauce. I just make an item and boom, there we go. It's limited. You can increase it, but it's not easy to do so. And it's just a way to say like, yeah, I just want something really quick. The Game Master can also add items to that common inventory after a while so that players have more choices on what to spend that on. Very, very easy. The class structure for this is fantastic. I love it. It has everything I like about Pathfinder 2e, which is you are choosing the features you want. So as a character, you know what your features are because you chose them. And you're also building towards a character concept you really like and a playstyle you're really going to get a kick out of. For the Game Master, and like we highlighted before, it showcases like, oh, yeah, like if you have a Chimerist, put monsters in front of them they can learn from. You know, if you have a fighter, make sure that there's always melee enemies in a fight, things like that. It's a really easy way, and there's lots of tools for the Game Master to say, I understand what my players want very easily, just based on the class they've picked, not necessarily on the skills they've picked within that class. So it's a really easy way for Game Master and player interaction that immediately creates a sense of investment for players. Because they go, yep, I want to play this way, this is what I want, and I'm going to be invested when that is rewarded. And it's easy for Game Masters to do that. Speaking of investment, I really like the world building here. You build the world as a group. You determine what your group is as a group. There is no set world for this, which makes writing content for it a little hard. Which might be why a lot of people are talking about this with a lot of passion, but nobody's talking about it, if you get my drift. It's not well known. Because there's not a whole lot of content to be made for it, because it's very setting agnostic. But I like how you make the setting. I love the meta currency, the idea of points that players can get that they can use. And there's plenty of incentives for them to use those points. There's ways for players to get more experience points. The more of these points, of the Fabula points they use, the more of those they use, the faster they level up. So there's plenty of reason to not hold on to them and to use them as quickly as you get them, which is great. There's just a lot about this that I really like. And I think this captures, oddly enough, I do think this captures the spirit of JRPGs. Not because there's a lot of grinding, there really isn't. In fact, the game even says at some point you really want to just keep conflicts set. You don't want to do random encounters, because that can be boring. And not even because like the level is 50 and you gain levels very quickly, not because of any of that, but because there are mechanical tools for players to interact with the world and each other in order to tell a narrative. And that is where JRPGs really shine, is in sacrifices, in characters surrendering, in a villain getting away and you chase them down later. There's even rules in here for villains transforming and becoming even stronger and getting better stats as they like ascend to godhood. So there's a lot of rules that simulate that kind of thing, but also really focus heavily on character interaction, narrative character interaction with mechanical benefit. So players are incentivized to use those narrative hooks because there is direct and immediate and simple to understand mechanical benefit to that, which is just fantastic. That's everything that you want in a game like this. I think this is great. I think this is absolutely fantastic. Let's go hold that right there. I think this game system is great. I really like this. This is my jam. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to read this today. And I'm so sorry because we hit the 3-hour mark. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining me tonight. I know this is weird and awkward because I was gone all weekend and that I'm just reading a PDF of a book. So I know that's really weird. I know that's really silly. That might seem really silly of me to do, but I am a professional game master. This is within my wheelhouse. And I do plan on running this professionally. So I'll definitely let people know when I am running this and how I'm running it. It'll probably be a lot of like learn to play. In fact, I think there's a learn to play scenario, which breaks down all the rules and introduces them very slowly. But I can definitely see myself running a campaign of this very, very easily. It seems very quick to set up. All the buy-in is from the characters, and I just go, yep, feed me some more. And it's all group creation as well, so the DM isn't sitting by passively. You make with the characters. You make with the players. This is great. This is fantastic. And I think it was maybe like $15 as a PDF. So I highly recommend it. Can't recommend it enough. But thank you everybody for joining me tonight. I know tonight was really weird. I know tonight was really kind of out of left field. This Friday, we will be back with Final Fantasy II. We'll be playing stuff again. We'll be playing Final Fantasy games again. Absolutely we will be. But thanks for indulging me for reading this. If you want me to do more streams like this, let me know. Let me know on Twitter. Let me know in comment sections on YouTube. Let me know in chat whenever I go live. Because I'd love to. This is what I like to do professionally. I like picking things apart and really looking at them. If you want me to take a bigger look at Fabula Ultima and like the GM section, the bestiary, how to make stuff, I will. I absolutely will do so. Just let me know if that's something you'd like to see. But until this next Friday, have a great week, everybody. Have a great night. Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to others. Stay hydrated. I know I'm going to. And I will see you at the end of the week. Goodbye, everybody. I need some water.